Hello, friends. Welcome back to another episode of I'll Call You Right Back podcast with me, your host. My name is Chad Medved. This is my podcast. Appreciate you being here this week. First off, if you are a new listener, I appreciate yinz being here. Appreciate you stopping over and taking a chance and listening to what I'm doing here at I'll Call You Right Back Studios. Basically, for anyone new here, I interview people long form about what they do and how they got to that point in their life. Over the last 7 years, I have interviewed 300 different people in the community of Pittsburgh. It's a big deal to me. The big number of 300 is a feat that I never imagined that I would get to. Actually, I'm lying. I did imagine that I would get there, but I just didn't think that it would, get here as quick as it has. 7 years has flown by. I've had the opportunities to speak with a lot of really, really cool people in the city that are doing great things to make Pittsburgh the city that we love. So if you're new, again, appreciate you being here. I would ask you, if you would like to support the show in any way, please just subscribe to the YouTube channel, comment a nice word, subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and most importantly, share it with a friend. If you're a Pittsburgher that is someone that appreciates people doing good things in the city, and you have other like-minded people that you're friends with who appreciate good people in the city doing good things, share the podcast with them. Get the word out there. That's my biggest challenge as of today, is just, getting the word out there to people that still haven't heard about it. 7 years in the game, and there's still people that come every week and tell me that they didn't know that I was here doing this. So again, if you want to share this episode, it is greatly appreciated. Thank you ahead of time. If you guys are watching on YouTube right now, please take a second to like the video, comment a kind word, hit subscribe to the YouTube channel, and that's pretty much all you could do as far as a free way of supporting the show. If you want to support the show monetarily, there is options for that as well. I have merchandise that is I lowered the price on my website right now. I'll call you right back.com. You can get some great t-shirts on there. I'm going to have some hats on there very soon. Hop on over to I'llCallYouRightBack.com and check out what I got there. In addition to merchandise, if you are a local business in the city that is looking for a unique way to advertise your business, I offer some advertising and sponsorship services. I have a services package page on my website, I'llCallYouRightBack.com. You could click on that. It'll kind of give you a breakdown on what I offer as far as, weekly intro spots, advertisements where you could advertise your business, your product, what you're doing, events, anything along those lines. But check that out. Everything is at I'llCallYouRightBack.com, and that's pretty much all I got to peddle this week for my stuff. Actually, I got one more thing. Sorry about that. I have an event coming up. March 15th, I am throwing an event with the Berg Bus. So we are going Saturday, March 15th, we are going to take the Berg Bus from the waterfront to a local haunted house called Castle Blood that's in Monessen for a St. Patty's Day weekend that is going to be a hell of a time. You buy a ticket on bergbus.com for that Saturday. You meet us down at the waterfront, 6:45 p.m. The bus will take off at 7 p.m. I am going to give my little spiel about the show. We'll talk a little bit. We'll laugh a little bit. And then I'm going to put on the 1993 classic, The Leprechaun, that we could watch on the way to the haunted house. So Castle Blood, local haunted house that has been in the game for 30 years. I've interviewed the owner on here a few times about, the passion and the love that he puts into Castle Blood, the haunt that he's been running this long, and it's a really great time. So I created these trips to be able to, patronize that place, because the people that run the haunts in the city of Pittsburgh are doing God's work for little to nothing. It's a real passion project. So if you would like to come and have a great time with us that Saturday, you can go to bergbus.com, click on the calendar, grab yourself a ticket, and let's go watch The Leprechaun. Let's go to a haunted house. Let's laugh. Let's have a couple drinks, and let's just have a great time for the St. Patrick's Day season. Now, the reason that everyone is here this week I sit down with a very, very great guest. In addition to all the people that I've sat down with in the past, each and every week we're bringing great people that do things for the city into the studio and talking to them about their lives. And this week I sit down with Dan Rugh, who is the co-owner, along with his wife Shannon, of Commonwealth Press. So Commonwealth Press is a union print shop in the city of Pittsburgh that has been operating for over 20 years. Dan and Shannon started this print shop in the basement of their first home in the Southside, in a little 6x6 area with one color press, and they have grown this business into one of the most popular and notable design firms in the city of Pittsburgh. They do screen printing, they do designing for branding and logos, they pretty much do it all. You know, that's a one-stop shop that you could go to and just get everything you need done as far as merchandising, as far as, you know, designing things, as far as, you know, branding in general. And they do a hell of a job. So I reached out to Dan, had him come into the podcast, and, you know, we sat down and we got into it all. We talked about his life, talked about growing up in old Punxsutawney with old Phil up there. We talked about, you know, his life before Commonwealth, which is, you know, fascinating in itself. You know, this guy was real into the music scene. He had friends in the music scene. He was on the forefront of digital media and website design. He's worked for a big name publishing company where he worked on the first Harry Potter book. Just so much stuff that this guy was into that was just fascinating beyond the greatness that he does with Commonwealth Press, which is, you know, that name speaks for itself. They've worked with, you know, all the big names, Eaton Park, the Steelers, you name it. But Commonwealth Press, I'm sure you've seen their work as you've navigated through the city of Pittsburgh. But it's a great episode along with the rest of them. You know, I can't say it enough that if you are someone that is just interested in the city of Pittsburgh and the businesses that make it what it is, this podcast is for you. You know, take a listen to this episode, obviously, but go back in the phone book, find a name that you don't know, or, you know, among all the other names that you do know, and just hit play, listen to these people's stories and how incredible, you know, all these people are that are just making shit happen. You know, it's an honor for me to have everyone in here. Like I said, we're getting up to the 300th episode. I am throwing a 300 episode party. You know, for anyone that's listening who enjoys the podcast, it's going to be at Brillo Box. It's going to be on March 29th. Details will come, but it's just going to be it's going to be a fun time. You know, for the 200th episode, I threw a little party at Streets on Carson where, you know, people were able to pull up and just, you know, kind of mingle with some of the past guests. And we're going to replicate that at the Brillo Box and just have ourselves a good time. So if you're interested, you know, reach out. I'll give you the details. I'll let you know what's going on. But yeah, beyond that, I want you to enjoy this episode. So without further ado, episode 298 of I'll Call You Right Back podcast with Dan Rugh of Commonwealth Press.
I gotta use the telephone.
Hello?
Telephone.
I'll call you right back.
Telephone.
I'll Call You Right Back podcast.
There's a couple of design podcasts that used to be local.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know if you remember, but like Pittsburgh had PodCamp. Did you ever hear of PodCamp?
No.
You know how we were texting about how, like, Pittsburgh's first with everything?
Yeah.
Like, there was a Pittsburgh PodCamp that was, like, so, you know, growing to be this national center for, like, podcasters. But this was, like, I could make up numbers, but, like, 2007.
Really?
2008. And it was, like, they'd have it down at the Art Institute. It was pretty dope.
That's pretty wild. I never heard about that.
Yeah, it was like, and it was just one of those things where if it would have just kept going, like I can't imagine where it'd be right now because nobody even knew what a podcast was.
Yeah, I started one a long time ago. This was like 2013, and there was no podcasts in the city yet. And I don't know if you remember that Work Hard place.
Of course.
They did it up there, and I was in the basement with a guy there who we just kind of,
Josh?
talked about nothing. I didn't do it with Josh. I did it with a guy named Buzzy, who he runs a thing called Epicast.
Yeah, I know.
They do like the drinking partners and stuff like that. But we did it back then, and it was like before anyone was really listening to anything, so it was easy to let it dissolve. But I mean, it's pretty wild to think about, how far shit has came, because 10 years ago no one even listened to anything, and now it's like,
oh god, yeah.
arguably one of the biggest mediums that you could.
Yeah, I don't think there's much arguing. That's like flat out. But yeah, it was crazy, because the whole idea of like just explaining to people what it was, But the dudes that were doing it were real like ahead of their time. But it was neat to see the Art Institute, because when you go in, the way they had it all set up, these people would come over from all over the country and stuff. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah,
it was always a pretty big order, because being printers, it was somebody we worked with. So like we were always stoked when it came around, because there was like so many, they'd get hundreds of shirts for this whole thing, and it was like, I just wish it would have kept going, because it was
I gotta
definitely ahead of its time.
I got to look more into that. I've never heard of that.
Yeah.
Will you do me a favor? Will you grab that coffee pot for me too, please?
You know it.
Fill up that cauldron.
Hell yeah. Where'd this come from?
That coffee?
No, the coffee, yeah, but
the coffee is Red Hawk. This is a City Drug, and this mug is by an artist named Jamie Matthews, who is a ceramics teacher, who was a.
I didn't top you off, and I don't want to come off rude. So is that?
No, that's all right. Yeah, that's good for now.
That is a gallon jug.
It is. This is a. That's right. This is like a good one. I like. I like to have it. I don't like a real hot cup. I can't have it like steaming. Like my wife wants her shit like steaming, and I just need it to be like I'm trying to down it.
Well, here's the nerdy thing: is like I remember I was a barista in a couple different coffee shops, but this one dude always used to come in and order the temperature he wanted it. I was like, what a pretentious. And then I'm like, that dude knew what he was talking about.
Yeah, he just knows what he wants,
because he got it. And it was ready to drink, rather than like burning yourself while you're driving and shit.
Yeah, I remember I worked in Century 3 Mall at Gloria Jeans, and this was like 2009, right out of high school, and people, actually it was in high school, so it had to be 2007, 2008, but people would come in and say like extra hot, or, they would want their shit just the way that it was, and I wasn't a coffee drinker back then, so, I was just like, look at this fucking guy, just like give me a break. But so you're from Pittsburgh?
I'm from
Punxsutawney,
cultural mecca of Western Pennsylvania.
Have you been to see the hog?
Hundreds of times.
Yeah.
But it used to. I mean, back in the day, that was we get out of school. You get half the day off if it was in school. And
yeah. So how far from your home were you away from the groundhog area?
I mean, you can walk. Like Punxsy's this big.
Okay, yeah, I've never been there.
There's no need. Like not being it's a real small town, but like the movie, it was so small that none of the movie was filmed there.
Oh yeah,
none of it was filmed out in like Illinois.
Wow.
But yeah, so in the movie it looks like it's in Groundhog Day it looks like everything happens downtown, and it doesn't. It's up on this hill up behind it. So
wow,
it would be a hell of a walk, but it's not.
Yeah, I've had some friends that went out there just this past one. My buddies, they were about to go out there. You want to go? I was like, no, I don't.
Yeah, before the movie came out, it was like, I mean, there'd be bonfires all over the place and people just partying, having a good time, and then you'd walk down over the hill and watch them do that. Once the movie came out, they have like turnstiles. I'm like, it's a family-friendly event, and standing out in freezing cold at 3 a.m. isn't like what I'm looking to do in my old age, But I'm stoked that people do it. And it was, I think this past year was like, it just had Groundhog Day just passed. So it was like 40,000 people coming to this town. I think it's got a population of like 5,000 or 6,000 people total, with like a 30-mile radius. So
yeah, that's crazy to think about. Yeah, it's like probably a blessing or curse for the town. People are probably like, Jesus, like this weekend.
Yeah, a lot of people are, and then a lot of people are stoked for it. It's like for a town that doesn't really have a lot going on. It's a boon for business. Like there's a brewery that just opened up there called Sandfly, which is like,
that's cool.
I'm sure they got killed. And they're like, do you think this will work? When we were first talking when they were opening, it's like, you're opening up a brewery and there's nothing for 30 miles. Like,
yeah, you're gonna be just fine.
You can do great, and they're good brewers, which is cool. But
well, so I mean, growing up, what kind of shit are you into?
Just playing in the woods.
Yeah.
You know, like, because I grew up, like, I eventually moved into Punxsutawney proper, like, in 7th grade, but I'm from, like, 10 miles out in this little coal town called Valier.
Valier.
Yeah. So
Never heard of that.
No, there's no reason. Like, it didn't have a stop. I was going to say it didn't have a stoplight. It didn't have a stop sign.
Wow.
You know, it was like, but my whole family was from right there. So, like, my dad, you know, he built the house I grew up in, you know, so, like, cleared trees, dug it, built, you know. So it was, like, woods.
Yeah.
So I played in the woods a lot. And then we moved into town, typical kid, just skateboarding, punk rock type stuff. But
yeah, that's interesting. I mean, it's always interesting to hear, you know, people's like, you know, obviously you're going to come in here, we're going to talk about Commonwealth, but, you know, I'm always fascinated to learn about people like, you know, as a kid, like what were your interests as a kid? A lot of people skating, a lot of people like music, everything like that. Yeah. That was like a through line. Could I ask how old you are?
Yeah, I'm 52.
52. Okay. Yeah. You don't look 52.
Thanks, man. I don't know what 52 is supposed to feel like. But
yeah.
I don't feel like it used to look.
Are you someone that is, you know, do you get weird about getting older?
No. I think once you cross 30, there's this thing when you start to look back, that like, oh my God, I'm turning 30. But once you cross that, everything levels out and you're just like, you know, so I don't even really think about it anymore, but you realize like all of the thoughts of it are on the person that you're talking with. Yeah. So it's like you hit, like, I think I've hit the elder statesman level now. So it's just like, you just get to kind of come back and there's this level of, calm nonchalance that comes with like, or maybe it's just confidence. You know, you've already like, I have failed at everything I've ever tried, learned from that and built something off it. I'm like, so when something goes wrong, it's like, we'll fix that.
Yeah. You're just like, you're settled now.
Yeah. Like, I don't know if I'd say settled, but I'm pretty, I'm settled into what I know I can accomplish. Or try to at least.
My age, I'm not someone that gets weird about their age. You know, for a while I was like, you know, my late 20s, I'm 34. Right. My late 20s, I would, you know, have these like weird, you know, panic attacks about like getting older and like death and everything like that. But I don't know, I have like a calmness to it now, just kind of just like chugging along, doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. But there's anything really to worry about.
Yeah.
You know, but you have things to accomplish.
Yeah.
You know, you want to get the stuff done. You're worried like, what if I go before my time? And now, you know, it's like, it's not the weight that I used to think it was.
Absolutely. Maybe. So I mean, coming up besides skating and music and everything like that, what about like high school? Like what are you into in high school? What do you think you're going to do after high school for a career?
That was so like I said, we moved from Valier into Punxsutawney. Like my parents split and we moved into Punxsutawney like in 7th grade. So that was like cultural. And it's funny because it's 7 miles, but it's like you're moving to the city, you know, because you're not out in the woods anymore. But it's like, so that was like I started to meet my like just my crew, like the dudes that I hung out with. We were all just like, pretty much it was just skateboarding at Harmon Field, which is like this little park, and nothing, man, just like riding bicycles. I'm trying to think like,
how did you get into that? Like, what was like the reason that you got into that? Like, do you remember someone who like got into that?
I mean, my sister's cool as hell. Like she's, you know how like you glom onto people that have like a little bit older than you. She's 4 years older than me. So like she went to college and brought back cool tapes. You know what I mean? She starts handing me, listen to this. So now that I'm like a proper weirdo, I blame her.
Yeah, my brother's 6 years older than me. You know, he was feeding me Ben Thugs and Harmony tapes, you know, shit like that.
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No. This is a very, you know, I have to apologize ahead of time. This is a tangential, interrupting filled podcast, but I think that that's what makes this podcast great. But I mean, growing up, it's always interesting to like, you know, where you like feed from, you know, what kind of things you feed from. And it's like, I put so much credit towards my brother for like getting me involved with like, you know, just cool shit. Yeah. I mean, if you got someone that's older than you, it's almost, they're like a coffee filter of like, you know, they develop a taste for cool things and then you know, pass it down to you.
Sort this off and be like, this is the good. Well, that's what I was going to say. I still have the tape that she gave me. It's actually like, it was her boyfriend at the time and it's her husband. They've been together. Like, he's like, I'm my brother, but like, they gave me this tape. It had Violent Femme's first album on one side,
Wow.
and Suicidal Tendencies' first album on the other side. And back then, it's like that's in the same genre because it's just not what's on the radio. So these, like you'd have Depeche Mode and Black Flag,
Yeah.
same band. You're like just stoked that there's something else.
Yeah.
But when they gave me that tape, I was just like, I was almost afraid when I was listening to it. It's like, holy what is that? And then that gives way to like, you start skating and then you pick up a Thrasher magazine and you open it up.
Yeah.
And you start looking at these pictures like, who's that? What's this? And it's pretty cool.
Yeah, like you're obviously a little bit older than me, so it's like, that form of media, magazines and everything like that, it's just like unheard of now.
Oh, yeah.
For me, I kind of got the tail end of it all because we were still getting Dance Comp and like CCS, but and like Thrasher obviously, but now I don't think that like people really have that sort of medium like laying around their house like they did.
No.
Everyone's just on their phone, which is kind of crazy to think about.
Well, and it's also like, I'd like, it sounds ridiculous, but it's like you're more connected, but it's less of a connected experience because like back in the day when Thrasher came out, or you wanted this tape, you earned it. You wanted to get it. You had to find, because there's no record stores in Punk, so you got to, go to Du Bois or Indiana. But when Thrasher came out, you'd read it. You read the whole thing, the music reviews, the people that wrote in, and then so did your dudes. So when you're like pissing around and talking, it's like, oh, did you read the,
Yeah.
So the same, you're digging for the same bands. You're digging for, and it's always cool to bring something to your buddies, be like, did you hear this one yet?
Yeah.
Oh, this guy used to be in this band, but check that out. So you get a little bit of something to go off of, but you're all starting from the same point, so like, yeah, it was cool. Like
Everyone's cross-pollinating with all the shit that they discovered themselves. Yeah, that's awesome. That's a awesome time.
Yeah, and that was cool too because like each area had its own thing. So it's like we're in Punksy, and the stuff that we're doing in there is so isolated. But you could start to see that like why different cities have different sounds of bands. A band from DC sounds so much different from a band from Minneapolis or Seattle or Southern California. But now that everything's so connected, these sounds like kind of
you can see what feeds off of each other.
And you could listen to a band from like Half-Life. You could hear Half-Life and be like, that's a Pittsburgh band.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
Yeah,
everyone has their own like characteristics that kind of like bleed through. You kind of like pull that out from each other.
Yeah, and inspire each other. And then you're doing this, and it's like, oh shit,
Were you like a show kid? Were you like a kid that was like going to like local shows and everything?
Yeah, I mean, there weren't any then.
Yeah,
like the closest you could see a show would be come to Pittsburgh, but never, you could never come here.
Yeah, it's a clip to get there.
It's an hour and a half, but also like you got to have a friend that drives. When you're just like you're not driving yet. So there weren't a ton of shows, but man, if we'd try to put on shows and stuff. It was fun. But
were you a musician?
Poorly, yeah. I've always poorly played.
That's good.
Yeah. That's kind of how the screen printing come about because it's like,
so during high school, it's like, what do you think you're doing for a career after high school?
Funny thing is, this is the dumbest. So I just realized this recently, but it's like there was this store in Punxsutawney called Designs Alive. It's one of those ones you could go in and like just look through all these iron-on shirts. It was the best thing in the world. Like we go to town, and if we're killing time, mom would take me in there and be like, get whatever you want. But you'd go in and get a shirt, and you pick the iron-on you want, but then they had all these letters and shit. You could like put, Dan on my hat. It's just ridiculous, but I love that shit.
Yeah.
So like once I started finding my groove of what I wanted to do, it was like I've always been doodling, and I never knew what to do with it. And then, there's a million stories that get to there, but once you get a computer and you're like, oh, that happens. Like I went to undergrad. My undergrad is from IUP for graphic design. We didn't have computers, so I graduated from IUP in '95. And when I was leaving, they had just opened up a graphics lab where you could go in and they had a scanner, and I was like, what the
Yeah.
And it was like they had this really cool. It was like, I'm sure they still make them, but it was like it was a hand drag scanner. And so people, you got to do it real slow over the thing you're trying to scan. But then I was like, oh, you just like pull it over your face. It's like you start pissing with it and just be like, okay, this tech exists for what else can I do?
That's pretty cool. So graphic design, whenever you were into it, I mean, like if you didn't have computers, like what was like the focus of it all? Like how were you was it like more, cutting stuff out and like doing like, collage type things?
I mean, it was tech skills. So it's like,
Yeah.
you learn how to use a tech pen. You learn how to, they used to have these rub sheets of letters. You'd flip them over and rub the letters onto it so you had perfectly shaped letters. You'd learn how to like, it was funny because like you'd be drawing this stuff, and then when you'd get graded, the teacher would take out a magnifying glass and like look and see if you had an ink bleed. Because there's like, when ink touches paper, it grows. So it's called dot gain. In printing, it's called dot gain, which all paper is absorbent to a different degree. So when ink touches it, it grows. So if you pause when you're drawing a line and it seeps a little bit into the paper, when you shoot that with a camera to make a billboard, that blob is going to be 10 feet tall. So like, they'd be like looking at it with magnifying glasses, and
it's crazy to think about it, because my 9 to 5 is like, I'm just doing AutoCAD on a computer all day. But
right.
I was at CCAC. I was the last class that did hand drafting.
Right. So you get it,
Yeah, a little bit. But I mean, like, it's just wild to think that like that was our time. It's like, it's almost like that was like forgotten. Now they don't do shit like that.
But back in the day too, like when you were a graphic designer, you were working with an illustrator and a photographer and a fontographer. Like, these were all different jobs.
Yeah.
And so now when you're a graphic designer, you're expected to be
everything,
a photographer and a fontographer, all this other stuff. So you have like all these, and now the graphic design, I'm not saying it's dying, but it's turned into an assumption. So if you are doing something, you can, like, if you're a graphic designer, you can animate too, right? So, and you can run video, right? You can edit, right?
Wow.
You can run sound. So I went to grad school for multimedia, and this was in 2000. But even back then, it was like they're training you on stuff that's just like, here's how these things exist, and kind of like you figure out how they work together. And now it's like part of the common like conversation. And like the things that are blowing my mind are like augmented reality and immersive design, and like these things that like, me and you and I could be sitting in 2 different countries right now with headphones on, but seeing this.
Yep.
And that shit's awesome. So it's like watching the evolution of anything, like of podcasting, is kind of cool, because it's like, okay, this technology exists. What's going to happen with it?
Yeah.
And so, I got my daughter's 17. She's looking at college, and she's asking like, what should I go into? And I was like, you can't make that decision. You just got to like go in with an open mind, with a direction. You have to be in a direction, but like pay attention to what's going on, and what, like, the thing that interests you the most is what you're going to pursue.
Yeah.
And once you get there, opportunity opens up.
Yeah.
And in that opportunity, there's more paths to get. It's like just,
So with your focus on graphic design and everything like that, like what was your dream of doing with that?
So I don't know what's broken with me, but I've always made t-shirts. Like I would, like, before I even knew how to do this, I was like thinking, you'd see pictures, like, again, no internet. So it's like, you'd see pictures of people screen printing. Like there's this one of Glenn Danzig from the Misfits laying on the floor, and, this huge squeegee, and you see Warhol doing it. It's like, okay, you're looking at it, that looks like a picture frame. And there's like a mesh there. So it's like, I remember stretching pantyhose on a picture frame, staple it. Then you get like, okay, I got to putting rubber cement on it, and then just pushing ink through it, or like cutting potatoes to make these stamps. So we'd make these dumbass shirts and like put tape on them and like spray them with bleach. And then, so it's like
how old were you when you made your first one?
That would have been probably 12, 13.
That's awesome.
Like early 80s, like mid 80s.
Really,
just
really
like
cool.
Pissing around.
Yeah.
Like trying, and I couldn't fathom how, because everything I was doing was hand drawn, but I'm like, how do you get an actual image? Because I'd see shirts with like a dude's face on there. And I remember asking my art teacher, like in elementary school, and he's like, oh, and he pulls out Rubelith. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen what Rubelith is. So back in the day for screen printing, it's Mylar with kind of like a gel on it.
Okay.
And the gel blocks light. So you would just sit there and cut. Like, you could lay it over a picture and then cut out all the areas and then peel it away. Lay that on the screen, and then that makes a stencil. So it's like, what the hell is that? So then. So
it was like a rubber block that was almost like tracing paper, essentially.
Kinda.
Yeah, like for lack of a better term.
Totally. Yeah. It's and in fact, like there's I don't know if you've ever seen Mike Budai's art. I'm sure you have, but he's a local screen printer. He has like a real psychedelic 70s style, and it's like really cool. But dude is just prolific. But he still cuts. He doesn't use a computer. Like he still cuts. Like he's cutting. And so we were printing shirts for him one time, and I was like, yeah, just email me your files. He's like, I don't have files. I was like, what? And so he shows me, man, he's got like a 7-color design, but he's only printing 3 colors.
Yeah.
So he's like, all right, I need green, so I'm going to cut this yellow and this blue, and they're going to overlap on that green.
Wow.
To create it on the fly. I was like, what?
Mike Badai?
Mike Badai, yeah.
Does he, is he just like kind of a solo guy?
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool.
He like, and he could easily be a professional artist doing what he does, but he just does not give a shit.
Yeah,
you know?
I gotta look him up after this.
Like, it's fantastic. His work is ridiculous, and it's like one of those things that I came to Pittsburgh. I had moved all over the place and ended up down in Virginia.
Yeah, when did you come here?
In 2000 for grad school.
Oh, okay,
so I was working in Virginia for a web design firm, and they offered me to get my master's degree. So I had to look, and there's two places that could do it. It was Richmond, Virginia, or Pittsburgh, and Duquesne offered what I could get, and so I suckered my wife into moving to Pittsburgh, and we're still here.
Wow. And you said you went to Duquesne for multimedia?
Yeah.
And I mean, like, you know, you had an interest in shirts. We were talking about like what your, you know, hopes and dreams were after school, like ideally.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so I even through school, I dropped out of art, and like I didn't even take art classes in high school, and like 10th grade, I remember just being like, I don't have time for this, you know?
Yeah.
Like, what do you got time for? You know?
I know.
But then I found this class my senior year, which I wish I would have known about it my freshman year, because I had 4 years of it, called VisCom, which was just, I never knew what it was, but it was making business cards, making T-shirts, photography, it was such a cool, it's one of the coolest class. So I took that my senior year, and it just blew my mind.
Yeah.
But I didn't know how to, so I'm just like collecting, you know, it's like collecting pebbles as you go. But went to college and just pissed around and lived with some friends after college, and ended up, a good friend of mine was living in West Virginia, and he offered me a place to stay. I lived with him for a bit, and one thing led to another, and I ended up getting a job at a book publishing company, like a big Doubleday company.
Oh, cool.
So I was there for like 2 years, just
doing
awesome.
what?
One color production. So for instance, I did the first 2 Harry Potter books, like the layouts, but you don't know what they are.
Way.
Well, they're just coming out. You don't even know what they are.
Yeah,
you know?
but that's insane.
Right. So the art's coming in, and our job is like, it's black and white art. You got to scan it. And then what I was talking earlier about.
You're talking about like the illustrations inside the book?
Yeah. So like the book, you get all the raw, like I'm in a product. It actually does sound pretty cool, but it was like very.
Dude, this is insane to me, because I'm literally in the middle of reading the Harry Potter books. You know, like currently, I just finished The Goblet of Fire. So they're just books that have been on my list for a long time, and I'm finally getting around through
awesome.
it. So it's like, it's just wild that you're telling me this now.
Okay, so I end up in West Virginia, Martinsburg, West Virginia, living on my buddy's floor. And I'm working, like, I'm out of gas, I don't have any money, and like got a job at the mall right across the street at a hot dog shop.
Yeah.
And then my buddy that I was staying with knew these people, because he managed the hosses, and they lived in this town. And there was this older couple that lived down there, and they were talking about this big book publishing company, and I was like, what is it? And she's like, it's a Doubleday. And I was like, oh, that's like
big deal.
That's the biggest. That's like, it's owned by Bertelsmann, which is arguably the biggest company in the world. But so I go down there, and they're like, oh, we know the production manager they're hiring. And I was like, could you get me an interview? And I go in, and I'm thinking, it's going to be you drive into this apple orchard, and then it opens up, and it's still one of the biggest buildings I've ever seen. The production floor for the printing of that was 3 football fields.
No shit.
Yeah, so it's like encapsulated, you know. And they use these scooters to get around. So I'm in this little. It was awesome, but I'm in this little, like, production room in the middle of the building, which is like closed in, so it feels like it's. But there's like, so these people are doing just text processing. So, for instance, the first Harry Potter book, it comes in, they get all the text, and they have to lay it out to make sure it flows right in the pages. And then there's like imposition setting, the way that the book's going to print, and then they bring in all the original artwork.
Yeah.
So you scan the artwork, and like I was talking before about Dockgain, like you have to take their art, scan it, but also make sure it's going to print right. So anything under 3% will plug up. Anything over 100% of ink will plug up. So you have to like readjust it. And the reason I knew that book was going to be a big thing is because most of the time you go through like 2 or 3 rounds of edits. I think we went through like 40.
Wow.
Like people, they just kept sending it back, like fix this, fix it. And you're like circling an area that's like, there ain't nothing. You go in and.
How old are you at this time?
That would have been 25 ish, 24.
Yeah.
Like
Man, that's pretty cool to hear that, like, you know, that was like one of the first things you did. Like that's neat.
And, yeah, it's totally cool. And then you go in and I think it's like, you just start this job and it's so funny. Like I interviewed with the guy who it's just like, you know, he's still one of the best bosses. I've taken so much off of him, but he was just such a dick, but cool. You know what I mean? Like, and so like when he hired me, he goes, your resume's all right, but here's why I'm hiring you. And he points at my address and I was like, why? And he goes, Western Pennsylvania, man. Like, let's have this conversation again in 6 months. And I was like, all right. 6 months later, I'd like kind of passed the dude that trained me and I'm talking to him and he's just like, things just move slower down here. You dudes are wired weird. Like, it's just like, work.
Yeah.
You know, this whole, and I never realized, because everybody I know is like that. Like, everybody I know is trying to do something or be the best at possible what they could be, you know, no matter what they're doing. And then you get around somebody like, I don't know if I ever really met anybody. It was like blatantly lazy.
Yeah.
And then you're like, what the, you didn't even do your job.
Yeah, shit moves slower other places.
It's crazy. You know, my poor wife, man, she's like from southeast Virginia. She's just, when we talk to her, like, my name used to have 2 syllables, like Dan. It was so sweet. We beat it out of her. I feel bad. Just like, Dan, like picking on her. But
how do you pronounce your last name?
Rugh.
Rugh. Okay. Now, I mean, you working at that publishing company, obviously you're still not there. So, I mean, like, how do you kind of get out of that?
Okay. So all right. So that worked pretty well. And, you know, we did some really cool projects. My resume looked good because, like, you could be at any print shop and you're like, eh. But this one had, like, you know, Danielle Steele and Kurt Vonnegut and all these names of, like, books that I have on my.
Are you a reader yourself?
Yeah.
Okay.
I love. Oh, and before I get off that, so this company used to have book sale every Thursday.
Wow.
So we could go down into the production floor and they would just have every book that we printed like that week or that 2 week. Hardbacks, all brand new hardbacks were $0.25.
No way.
All paperbacks were $0.10. And they're still pulling profit on it because it's like just, you know. But we could, so when my wife and I would have parties at our house, we'd have just like boxes the size of bathtubs full of books just like that we weren't going to read. And it's like, people were just like, what the fuck, you know.
Man, that's awesome.
It was awesome. But like we had redone the whole, like Kurt Vonnegut's my favorite author. And we had redone the whole B-series releases of his. And so I laid out the art for all of his, for that release.
Yeah.
So like every little sketch he did. And it's just so when I saw that you know, it made a resurgence in the mid 2000s of like that tombstone that says, everything was beautiful, nothing hurt.
Yeah.
That was one of his drawings, you know, but I'm like, I physically held that, you know, it's like,
man, that's cool.
Yeah. That was my favorite. But so in that process, so we're in this, and the cool thing is I'm living in, at this time, we had moved down to Winchester, Virginia, which is like the northern tip of Virginia, right in the mountains. And it's, you know, it's not too far outside of DC, so maybe like 45 minutes to an hour outside of DC. So they were able to get pretty big clients out that way, but it still had this like, welcome to this small town, you know, type feel.
Yeah.
And then there was a lot of print shops out there, and there was this one print shop that used to print Martha Stewart magazine, and she wanted a website. And so the IT director of that print shop started a web design company. And I didn't know anything about code. I didn't know, like, no, this was 98. And I'd been pissing around with, like, while I was doing the production, I was like, the next medium you start, you know, like building websites like HTML. So I started teaching myself how to write code and build a website. Just like all my buddies were in bands still. Most of them were still back in PA, but I built this website. It was just like focused on the 814, like 814 area code.
Yeah.
And all these bands were out there. So we started, it wasn't like a record label, but we started like just a promotions thing of just all my friends would go to this website, you know, and just like we had a message board. Those were hilarious. And then like it was back when you didn't know what to do with the web, so you just put whatever you want on it. So
yeah.
I had some of my friends writing articles, and I was just posting comics, and it was cool. But like it was neat because it gave us all a place to stay in touch. Because you know, up until then, when you left, you know, if you didn't have somebody's phone number, they're gone.
Yeah.
So this is a really cool place to stay alive. And I used that to teach myself how to code. And then when I heard that there was a web design company starting up, I started trying to put my resume together. And one of the guys that worked at the print shop got a job there. And he was like, dude, you should come work here. And he got me a job. And it was awesome. It's pre-2000s, early 2000s. So it was
ground level.
Oh God, the stereo. I was the 18th or 20th hire at that place. And it was in this old, almost log house in downtown Winchester, which is smaller than Punxsutawney, it felt like. And you just go to work and goof off. Not goof off, you're doing your job, but it's it was the stereotype of a web design firm in the 90s, Nerf guns and video games. And it was, you're like, man, how does this even sustain itself? And we're building websites for millions of dollars. We did Martha Stewart's first website. I did Reba McEntire's first website. We did shit for the Air Force and shit. It was nuts.
That's cool. I mean, dude, I've interviewed almost 300 people now, and it's so cool to hear people that are a little bit older than me, just their come up, because for being someone that's a little bit younger, it's we didn't get to experience that sort of the beginning of it all. I interviewed a couple people that are just they got in on the ground level of selling cell phones whenever that was the boom. And it's just crazy to think that at one point these cell phones just weren't what they are now. Everyone has them in their fucking pocket, and people start, I mean, everywhere just got to start somewhere, and it's just it's cool to hear about it, the origin stories of everything.
But it's it is, and it's also Anthony Bourdain.
Yeah,
that's one of the episodes I was checking out too. Is you dudes talking about him selling cell phones.
Yeah, he just came up. He's going to be my episode 300. He was just in here last week.
No way.
Yeah, he's a good buddy of mine.
Oh, he's total dudes, man. That guy is an A+ in my book.
Yeah, the cell phone, it's hilarious. It's cool.
But that's the thing, and it's so, and imagine even when the cell phone came out, I'm why do you need a cell phone? For me, I'm I don't need that shit.
Yeah.
I avoided it forever, and then it's that makes so much sense, especially because I didn't have one until I owned my business, So it's oh my God, this is so freeing.
Yeah.
But now it's I can't imagine leaving without my phone, and it's
I know,
my
it's
entire
sickening.
business is in there, and it's I don't have my notifications on. I always set it face down so I don't, because otherwise you're
Yep, that's why I always try to keep it. It's here just in case, but it's you got to have it. But yeah, so you're building websites for these these people back in the day whenever it's just starting up.
Yeah.
And how long were you there?
Couple years. So it was funny. So that company grew exponentially. So it was I think by the time I left, there was 300 maybe.
Oh wow!
It was huge. And the art department, there was just 4 of us, and it was so fun. It was just one of the best. And we had done, so I had gotten into, as that started to grow and the way it would advance is working with the programmers, and we started getting into, which now would be UI, UIX, user interface type stuff. Flash was, I don't know if, have you ever heard of Flash? You don't Flash? Yeah. I don't want to date I'm about to date myself because this is hilarious. But I became a Flash animator. So that was my, I don't know if I ever focused on anything so hard as how much I loved that, because it was it made so much sense to me, because it was I could draw this thing, and then I can move this thing in a way that makes sense, and then I can put code inside that thing as it's moving, and that just blew my mind. And then, and then my entire existence disappeared like that, because HTML5 came out and they're we're not going to support that, because so I have this whole no different than somebody that can speak a language. I could write action script. I was blah, and then all of a sudden it's literally one day when HTML5 came out, they're we don't support that anymore. I was
yeah, so it's your your work that you put all these years in and everything, it's just useless now.
Yeah, it'd be if all you spoke was English and they're we don't support English anymore. You're
yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, it was nuts, but yeah, whatever. So I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. I was just going to say, so, I mean, you doing that and kind of, figuring that stuff out, and the new wave of the way things are done come in, is that discouraging? Or were you more embracing it? Here's another thing, let's keep going and learn this.
I love when somebody goes, this is new. I'm just like, I want to pull it apart and look inside and see what it is. And so my when I was working for that web firm, my boss would come over and be like, there's a job coming down the road that it's going to need music production for it, and we have to edit this audio, learn this program. And I'm like, yes, and I would sit down and like, so this one, like when looping first came out, like simple loops, I remember this program Acid came out, and it was just like, it was 4/4 time, and you would just grab these different sounds and put them together, and like you could create songs like that. It was awesome. And my job was just to figure out how it worked. So I would just like make up fake bands, I would sit there, and I had this one band called 20 Go to 10. It was just me, but I always acted like but I would build these little, and each song was like 1 minute. And back then you'd have these executable files. So I would make a song, and then I'd make an animation and package it in an executable file, and then send it to everybody in the shop. And I'd make flyers for them and for fake shows and hang them all over the office and just fucking around.
Yeah, that's awesome though.
Yeah, it was so much fun.
It's like an incubator for creativity.
It was the first time that, like, I remember when we first started there, one of the other artists was like, "Hey, you want a cup of coffee?" And I was like, "Yeah, dude." And he goes, "Let's go." And I was like, "All right." And so we start walking out to the kitchen, and he walks out the door, and I was like, "Where are you going?" He goes, "Coffee shop down the street." And I was just blown away that we were allowed to leave. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
But, because at the other place, you'd be like, they check when you go to the bathroom.
I know.
And so it's like, "Wait, what?" And he goes, looks at me just like, what?
Yeah, it's crazy.
So we walk down and get a cup of coffee, and then later that same boss, the one that I was talking about, would tell me to figure out software. He'd be like, one day I'm just sitting there and I'm all pissed off, and he's like, "What's wrong with you?" I'm like, I can't get this. It's driving me nuts, and I want to flip my table over. And he goes, "Go home." I was like, "What?" It's like noon.
Yeah.
He's like, "Go home. Come back tomorrow inspired." And I was like, "What?"
Yeah.
He goes, go hiking. Because we live near the Appalachian Trail, so I used to do a bunch of backpacking. And he goes, "Go sit on a rock somewhere." And I was like, what?
Yeah, charge your batteries up a little bit.
But that whole thing of like, when you realize that somebody gives a shit about you,
yeah,
you want to blow them away.
Absolutely.
So it was like, holy shit, dude, that's amazing. So like, I came back the next day, I'm like, check this out.
That's awesome.
It is.
Now, while you're doing this, do you have any sort of idea that you wanted to make T-shirts, or was that just like, an interest on the back burner still?
My wife has told me, and I don't remember saying this, but my wife told me, because we met in Virginia like that when I was working at both of those places. And she had told me when we first met, she goes, "You looked me dead in the eyes and said, I want to have a T-shirt empire."
Oh, really?
She starts, and I'm like, I don't understand what it is, why I like it so much. But she said, and I look back at you, and because she goes, "You don't even know how to use a computer."
Yeah.
Because like, I didn't have a computer at the time. I didn't know how to do it. So it's funny how you hear stories about yourself that people remember you and you don't.
Yeah.
It's like, that's an absurd thing to say, but like,
yeah, well, it's interesting because it sounded like that was like a cool working environment. So I'm trying to get like I'm trying to gauge your mindset as far as like, do you have once of being an entrepreneur at that time, or did you kind of just like, fall into that path?
I always wanted to do my own thing.
Okay, yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like that thing where it's just, I've realized by owning my own business, I'm a really good employee. Like, I do my job, and I make sure that when my job's done, the other person's job's easier.
Yeah.
Because of it. I assume, growing up, they just assume everybody's like that. And so as I'm working through this, like, I remember talking to my boss one time about just like freelance work, because the web design firm, they wouldn't touch a job under $30,000.
Oh yeah.
Like, that's the level where they were.
Big fish they were looking for.
Oh my God. Like, hundreds of thousands like, we did this one site that never even launched. It was $1 million quote.
But if you have these skills, so it's like you could, there's all these little fish that need help.
Totally. And so the way that it actually kind of transpired, it's a funny like time, because I'm working at this firm, and I remember one day the owner, like my one friend, Paul Zadepsky, he's like one of my mentors. He's like 10 years older than me, just like an artist. Like, everything in his life is art, and it's like, he doesn't mean to be. He's just like, looks like some dude that's like, he looks like a lumberjack. But and he's sitting behind me. He's like, uh-oh. Look out the window, and the owner of the place, who was, you know, just the tech nerd, pulls in a shiny red Jaguar. And I was like, it just was so out of, and you're just like, what is that? And then you're thinking like, and I remember registering that like, something's different. And you realize like a couple of days later, it's announced that the business sold. And while I was there, it had sold like 2 or 3 times because like the web was going like this, and you could feel something coming. Something was going to change. And I remember one of our contracts required every department to have a terminal degree, meaning the highest degree exists in that department. So like business had to be or a doctorate or whatever. But in art for multimedia, nobody offered that, except you could get a master's. So there's no thing higher than a master's at the time. And I remember being like, hey man, we're kind of in violation of this contract.
That's how you worked it to get the master's.
And I was like, hey, if not only the master's, like I didn't really care about going to school. It was just like something's gonna happen, and I want to make sure that like I'm ahead of the curve before like you're just standing around wondering what happened.
Yeah.
And so I was like, you know, I signed a contract with them. I won't go anywhere, but like if you want to send me, I'll get this degree just so that we're not in violation. And they did it, and it was awesome. And they even agreed to pay for it in advance. I'm like, I don't have the money, because usually if you get an A, they'll, you know, pay for it. But I was like, I don't have the money to pay for the degree, but if I don't get it, I'll pay you back. This whole thing. And so it was in the contract and everything. So we ended up moving to Pittsburgh, and my wife and I weren't married, and I proposed to her. I was like, I want you to come with me, you know, like, and it was really cool because it was a really cool time. And we moved up here, and we lived in the Southside.
What year was this, you said?
2001.
Okay.
So, but right after the contracts, I got accepted to Duquesne for multimedia. 9/11 happens.
Yeah.
That causes the .com crash. And like within the year that I'm there, like I start to see like all these web firms going under. I'm like, oh shit. You know, so so you're only supposed to carry like 4 to 6 credits for in a master's, but I started like getting approvals to carry like 12. You know, I was trying to like, because you could see it. So I crammed it. It was like a 2.5-year degree, 2-year degree into like a year. And just like, because a lot of the stuff, it was so new. You're like, here's Photoshop. And I'm like, I don't know. So I crammed so much into it. In my last semester, the company completely went under. So it was just like really good timing. And I was contracted to go back to Virginia. I don't have to now. So like,
wow.
Which was perfect timing. But it was also just like your whole world's collapsing around you. And it's like, and you're kind of watching your friends. It's like the stereotype of a corporate takeover. Every friend is like getting fired, and you're like, what the hell's going on?
Yeah. Did you like Pittsburgh? You wanted to stay here?
Oh, I love Pittsburgh. Like, yeah, I wanted to get back to PA pretty much the whole time I'd left. But I don't think I loved Pennsylvania until I left it.
Yeah.
You know, because you just assume it's
don't realize how beautiful it is. And
how beautiful it is, and the people are the people that I know. I don't want to say they're better than everybody, but they're the people I know.
Yeah.
You know? And my wife loved it. You know, we come to Pittsburgh, and we'd come to visit, and I remember her coming in, and we were driving on the 10th Street Bridge, and we had friends back then in like mid-90s that lived in the brew house.
Yeah.
Like back when it was like almost a death trap. It was beautiful. It was so dangerous. But we're driving in, and we're driving across the 10th Street Bridge, and she looks up and sees like Tim Collins' geese, but she's like, oh my God, that's beautiful. And I was like, yeah, picture that dude crawled up there and did that.
Yeah.
And she was like, thinking that it was the city that did it. I was like, nah, man, that dude crawled up there and did that shit.
Yeah.
You know? And so, you know, we go to the brew house. We're having a cookout on the roof and just looking at the city. And I think she fell in love with it. So when it came time, she didn't want to go to Richmond because she'd grown up there and around there. And I was like, let's go to Pittsburgh, man. I've always wanted to be there.
And then you said you lived in Southside?
Yeah.
Back whenever it was like, you know, the
Fun.
mecca of it all.
Fun, yeah. We moved in like right at the, right there. So it was like just uber cool. And I loved it, man. It was fun as hell. And then I'd walk to Duquesne, you know, because I lived around 20th. So every day I'd walk down to across 10th Street and up the Duquesne steps.
Yeah.
I was fit, man. Those steps are no joke. I'd ride my bike down, throw it over my shoulder, go running up the steps. And
Yeah, that's sick. I mean,
fun.
and for you to be like a a music guy that's into that world and like being in the Southside, then I was too young to realize how incredible it was.
Oh God, yeah.
Back then, but I interviewed a guy named David Rouleau. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him.
Name's familiar.
He wrote a book about it, and it's just like,
which one?
I can't remember exactly. I think it's just called maybe Southside, but I interviewed him. Forgive me for
I'll dig it up.
Yeah, I have it, but I'll let you know what it is after that. But he basically just went around and interviewed all these places, talks about like all the old venues,
That's
all this stuff, and it sucks because growing up I was a show kid. I was at the height of like the emo stage, so I was like Warped Tour, all that shit. So we would be at shows every weekend, and it was incredible to me at that time how much access we had to like all these local shows and music scene. But then, I knew about what I was in at the time, but I didn't know about how, insane it was before my time.
Oh God.
And you're just like, man, it's just so awesome to hear about all that stuff, that was like a reality right in our city.
Oh God. Yeah. It was so cool too, because it was like, it's insular. So like Southside, like there are venues there that weren't venues.
Yeah.
I remember going to places to watch, like basement shows. I love basement shows in Pittsburgh. There's nothing better than that. But like even bars would allow bands in because there's so many.
Yeah.
And each one. So I remember like I lived in the Southside for 13 years, and I only put like 4,000 miles on my car. Yeah. I never left. There's no need like to ever leave where I'm at. Like I'm not going to cross a bridge. What are you talking about? Like, drive. I got a good parking spot.
So if you lost your job there, you didn't have to go back. What do you end up doing whenever you move here?
Well, luckily I had, I started like I could feel it coming, and I got my resume tight. And I started sending out some resumes, and I had a couple really big clients. That I was doing freelance for like building websites and stuff.
Yeah.
And whenever I lost my job, my wife, she's a classical musician, and she has like a music therapy degree in psychology. And she's like, but when she moved here, she just had to get a job quick, and she started selling cars, and she's freaking amazing at it. She's like killing it selling cars, and it's cracking me up. It's just because she was just like, the best way to be a salesman, don't try to sell them something.
I know, that's funny.
The thing that you want. And I never knew she never gave a crap about cars, but she's like anybody, when you're interested in something, you learn.
Yeah, you learn it.
And to this day, like she'll tell you why a Toyota is one of the.
She still sells cars?
No, no, I ruined that. But I have these like visual images in my head of like just the like. This sounds ridiculous, but I don't know. Maybe you do it too. Like when you picture the days of the week, do you have I picture like a loop.
Yeah.
And like, but it's a half. It sounds so dumb, but like everything that I do has this visual image to it. So like when I lost my job, and I was doing I was trying to survive on these websites. I started envisioning like this. It's almost like a lily pad, where it's like I have my foot on this thing and I keep pushing on it to see if it'll hold. And then all of a sudden I'm like, I have enough work here to do this.
Yeah.
And so I just like throw all my weight on it, and I'm like, holy shit, this is holding me up, and I'm like starting to do that. And still blows my mind that it worked, because like websites at the time were just like people's idea. Like I did one for this lady. She's still one of the most inspiring people I've ever met. Her name's Sandy Lerner. She founded Cisco Systems pretty much. Well, her and her team, she was on the team, but and then like there's a makeup company called Urban Decay that she invented.
Oh, really?
But yeah. She's like, she lived in this farm out in rural Virginia. It's like this huge organic farm. So she got fired from Cisco in like the 80s, but about like the same guy that fired Steve Jobs, but just did what like probably we would do. You just follow your passions and like she set up an organic farm and had like all this. It was just amazing. Oh, so like my wife plays music, but she also played in the ska band at the time, and their bass player worked for this lady. Listen, so his job, she was like, there's this, like he described what he does. So he's like works in her recording studio. Like, so of course you'd have a recording studio, but he was like, there's this opera singer in Dublin in a month. I want you to go over, and record it in this church and then come back and mix it down. And I want to donate it to the Smithsonian. That's what that dude would do. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, right. So I'm talking to him and he's telling me all this stuff. I'm like just blown away by how cool that is. And he's like, she wrote an audio dictionary. It's just a dictionary of audio terms. And she wants to make a website of it. We talked to her. I was like, you just post out. But in talking to her, she's like, no, they're definitions, but like on each definition, if there's another link, like if it mentions another word in the dictionary, it'll link to it. And she's like, which now is Wikipedia.
Yeah.
But like that wasn't really a thing. She's like, can you build this? And I was like, yeah, man, it's like text based, like just real simple. So me and my buddy Steve built it, and it's still it's hilarious because it was like at the time it was like this mind blowing thing, but it's like made enough money to like do this, but also I built this relationship with her. And then other things that she needs. So now she needs a site for the farm. Sorry to go off on her so much, but it's just
that's
like,
all right.
She's fascinating. But so all these little things that I was doing, each one then offers another opportunity.
Yeah.
And so as I'm doing that, I'm also still running the website 814 for shows and all that stuff. So my friends' bands are, I'm building their websites now because people are looking for websites and they all needed T-shirts. So my buddy in Erie had a press. So I was designing, he's printing, and we're like starting to see like the fabric of what it is now.
Yeah.
But I'm just pulling all these little things together. So it's like I'm just living in this direction and these things are happening. And so it's like, it wasn't a grand scheme, but it was like once you're doing something, you can kind of see it. Other people can't.
Yeah.
I think it was obvious.
Yeah.
This coffee's caffeinated is how I feel like I'm starting to be like, hey,
no, it's good. Right. It's good.
Sorry if I'm like, bah.
No, I like it. Dude, everyone that I've talked to, it's like, that's what makes the conversations interesting because it's like, hearing these like different opportunities that kind of like, lay the groundwork of like, your network, and like what the universe provides as far as opportunities that like, make you take that next step in that direction to what you're doing.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like you said, you were still running the 814 website and there was like a void where your buddies needed T-shirts and everything like that. And you knew someone that had a press and you kind of you seem like like a self-starter type of guy that like just figures it out himself and makes it happen.
Yeah.
And it's cool to hear that like, that's kind of how it presents itself and you find a need and you figure out how to do it and it kind of just like falls into place like that.
Yeah.
Totally. Dude, that stuff is like literally why I started this conversation. I started, conversations with people because like we know about all these like things that ultimately, these people's life's work, whether it's like whether it's like, Leona's ice cream sandwiches or something like that, the final product, but the real story is like we want to know like how the sausage is made. We want to know why you got to these things. Yeah. And the people that listen to this, they appreciate, the long form, of what I do with this.
To hear what's wrong with people. Like,
yeah, dude.
What's wrong with you? Like hyper focus.
Really, it's just like, this is just like proof that like, we're all not, it's not just us that are crazy. Whenever I say us, it's like the listener. It's like, everyone, whether it's like you run a successful business and it's like, you're nuts too, for lack of a better term. It's like, you're just crazy enough to do it and like figure it out. Yeah. And like, it's the stuff that like, is like, dude, it's like a concentrated dose of motivation for people like me. And I'm sure for people that listen to this, that it's just like regular people figure this shit out. And I don't know, dude, it's fascinating to me. So, and you told me in 2002, Commonwealth started.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was just in your house in Southside.
Yep.
And
yeah, it was like web design in the attic. And then I eventually got a press. My buddy in Erie stopped doing it. And I got a press and put that in my basement.
What kind of press was it?
It's called a printer. So the reason I got it, it's all in one press.
Yeah.
So like, it's got a screen rack on the bottom. It's got its own exposure unit. People trash talk these things in the internet so bad because it's like starter kit. I'm like, I've been banging on that thing for like, seriously, like 15, 16 years, like just hammering on it. And the thing works.
Yeah.
But I got it because it would fit into the basement. Like I measured like literally the sides scratch the walls when I'm going in.
Yeah.
And I always, dudes at work are sick of this one, but it's like I'm 6'1", and the roof in the basement was 6 foot. So I was like, my head would be between the rafters, and I'm like, and like a little the shop was built in less than a 6 foot square, like 6 foot cube.
That's
so
awesome.
It's awesome. That's why sometimes like I'm in the warehouse, I'm like, look at this.
Yeah, you can move around and stuff.
It's hilarious.
Now that first press that you got, was that just like one color or?
It started off, so that's the cool thing about these printers is like it's one color, but it has bolts, so you can like add stuff. If you want to go 4 color, you can. So it's a one station, but it had a 4 color head, so I could do 4 colors. But then I was figuring out what talk about it. But it's also like you said you grew up in like the whole DIY. Like you can just figure it out.
Yeah, you figure out how to make it work.
Figure it out. So like people would come in with like 5 colors, and it's like. So I figured out a way to be able to remove remove a screen and put another one on in the same exact spot, which is stupid.
Yeah.
But, and then like the way CMYK works, it's 4 colors, but it has to work on white. And I remember sitting there and, it's Pittsburgh. Everybody's wearing a black t-shirt.
Yeah.
And people wanted this on black. And I was like, why can't you use the black of the shirt as the black of the color and print white and let it show through? And I was
the
like,
negative space.
Right. So I started posting these, but it's like the way CMYK works is like it creates this blending of the colors on press, which is fascinating.
Say this again, CM.
So anything that you see that's printed like a magazine or something, like it's printed, it's called CMYK. It's like that book cover right there is CMYK.
Yeah.
So cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. So, and the science of this is awesome. And I won't try to go into it because it's complete print nerdery. But those are the inverse colors. So that's additive color. That's subtractive color. So when you and I are seeing right now is red, green, and blue. And so that's light. The combination of all those colors becomes white. The combination of all ink colors is usually like muddy brown. Technically, they want it to be black, but it's like a muddy brown. So in order for us to be able to see multiple colors in print, some genius figures out that like the way your eye interprets color inverses. So when you're interpreting these colors, the opposite of red, green, and blue is cyan, magenta, and yellow. And then they overprint it with black to trap all the color together. So
wow.
So when they're on press, you can create all colors in the visible spectrum with 4 colors. And the beauty of it is when you're printing, you allow them to blend on press so that as these two are touching, they're creating other colors. And so when you look at them, it's like this fascinating thing.
Yeah, this is wild. We have we're printing out, big schematics at work and everything like that. And the big plotters that we have, they only have the 4 colors. Mm-hmm. And it's cool to think about that.
Yeah. And that's how that's working. That's
it's insane.
It'll drive you nuts. And like, so those are the, I did this one piece where once you start to realize how that works, it's like, well, it's creating dot patterns of each one of these channels. And I was like, I wonder if I can hand draw those dots. And so I've done a couple pieces of work where I draw the halftones of each color and then print them on top of each other to see if it'll work.
Yeah.
So it's like, I figured it out that I have like 20 hours in each channel. And I'm sitting there like figuring, my wife's like, what if that doesn't work? I'm like,
I know.
But then, it's like after work one day, I'm in the warehouse printing, and it's it's like 3 a.m. and I'm like, holy shit, it worked, and it's like nobody's around, nobody cares, nobody would even care, but I'm like, that worked. And
that's dope though.
The only person in the world, I remember posting a picture of it, and one of my old bosses at the book company, her name's George Deering. She's one of the smartest people I know. Posted like on my social media, she's like, I see what you're doing, that's nuts, holy crap. It was just like, you're the person I wanted to see that, because I remember asking her, why are these colors this, or why is it 300 DPI versus 72 DPI? Like why do we need that information
for
this to work there?
Validation from the people that knew what you were doing,
that taught it to me.
And
for them to be like, well, holy crap, what are you doing? And I was like,
that's cool.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like you starting that in the basement, how does that, morph into, where it is now? It's just like, a need, and you fill the void for that need
constantly
and just growing from there.
That's it. And so like, even to this day, we haven't traditionally advertised, like it's just, we do the work. Hopefully you like it. And if you like it, we get to do more. And if you don't, please tell me, like we'll fix it. Like I'll fix anything that I've done wrong. I'll fix. So, you're talking about like Warp Era Tour. So we're printing, and then I'm getting busy and I've got the web stuff and I got the printing stuff. And I start showing my wife how, like, I mean, selling cars is fun. You're working your ass off. Like, you could work way less and make the same money. And I'm like writing it down to show her. And so I suckered her into coming home and working together. So that's when we made it official. It was like Commonwealth Press and like working out of our house together. And we didn't leave the house till like 2005, 2006, I think.
Just grinding in there.
Just pissing around. And it's like, I remember there were a couple nights, it was so funny, where like, cause my hours are weird and hers are, before we had kids, she would like very Southern with her sleep, sleep as long as she can. But there'd be times I'd be going up the stairs to bed and she'd be coming down the stairs to get up and we just high five. Yeah. She's going to the, get on press, and it was funny.
Now, I mean, like in the beginning, whenever you're doing this, you're obviously doing small jobs here and there for people that need it. But, like what's like the first like, big break necessarily where you're like, this could be a reality?
Well, a lot, like the everything that kind of like sandwiched in together allowed these things to happen. Yeah. But we started. You mean like all the different revenue streams that you're working on? Just okay, everything was stacking up, because it's like I never wanted to have all my eggs on one little pit, all in one basket. Yeah. Because like this can be taken away, but it's like, I'm testing all kinds of stuff. Like I bought a CD duplicator and I'm doing stuff for my friends' bands and fold, so you had CDs and we do this real simple like fold and put them in, and so they have. That was a nightmare. I stopped doing that immediately. But like, so you don't really know what's going to stick. And then my friend that was doing the screen printing, I wasn't taking any of that. I was just like, he ran a business and we can work together. I designed this, you do it. And then when he quit, I'm like, I can do that, So bought the press. And so you start to see like these different things that can work. And then Shannon's my wife. So she owns, like I said, the other half. Being from Richmond, the thing about Richmond is the music scene there is phenomenal. It's amazing. Like, and so many big bands have come out of there, and they're just some of my favorite people in the world. But she was like friends with some of the dudes that started and became Lamb of God, and so there's like a big metal band, and we printed their stuff for a while, and it was just like, that's sick. Yeah, you're sitting there looking like, holy shit, and they're dudes, Yeah. But that was a really big one, and then like, here in town, like. I remember meeting with like Voice in the Wire, the dudes from Voice in the Wire. They were fantastic, and I loved that band. And then sitting with them, and a lot of the bands that were on AF Records, we started getting some of that local stuff, and it was just really cool. Like we had a lot of real good support from the music scene, and it was like something that, always want to be in a band, but I'm terrible at everything. So putting creativity into that and being part of it was really rewarding, but it was also growing. So like we would have these other bands come into town that we knew, and like, passing through, and we just give them their shirts and throw some stickers in. Next thing you know, we're getting orders from Cleveland, because now they played Cleveland last night, and people are coming to our website, and it's like, oh shit, so you realize that like your dudes are traveling and hyping you up, and you're hyping them up, and then you just like start to grow. So it was like, it wasn't really one thing, it was one time, but right there in the early aughts. But we got this space right across, like on the corner, like, do you know where Zed's is? Oh yeah. In the South? So that was our old space.
Oh, in there
like that. When we moved out, there was a comic book store and then them. But so around the corner there, if you ever walk around the corner, that used to be a beer distributor, and above that was just this open loft that an architect had turned into this just like loft living space that I remember looking up to, and had these like doors that would just open up, and you could like, what the hell is that? I was telling a friend of mine from home one day, and this is like a Groundhog Day, about this cool building, and her sister walks in and goes, the gold brick one? I go, yeah. And she's like, my husband owns that. It's like, oh wow, if that place ever comes open, let me know. And I'm like, 6 months later it did. And so I'm just like, how weird is that? And then I'm talking to my wife like, can we afford this? And it's like, we tried it and almost went under a couple times, but you just start like really focusing. And she's like,
when did you move into that building? 06?
06, yeah, 05, 06. Right.
How long were you in there?
So we were in there till 2011, because when that front space opened up, our landlord asked if we would move in there because he didn't like having.
Where's Zed's is you're talking about?
Yeah, where Zed's is. So we moved our entire shop into there. So you'd walk in and the place was full of presses. But like you could walk in for like 6 feet and just be like, we had so many people coming like, what the hell is this place? It's like, oh, we're a print shop. But then you start to realize, man, all these people are walking by the window. So we just start like coming up with the dumbest ideas for shirts that we think are hilarious, put them in the window, and people come in like, are you selling that? It's like, yeah, you want one? You know, and just
what's like one of the first ones that you guys did that like was that like caught on that people were into?
The biggest one that made me realize like I didn't know that this level of bottled lightning exists, but we did a Mike Tomlin with, you know, during Obama's run when Shepard Fairey did the Yes We Can.
Yeah.
It's right when the Steelers were headed to the Super Bowl, and we did a Mike Tomlin with Yes We Can under it. And, excuse me, it blew up so I can't fathom. I can't even express. Like somehow it got into the paper, and the lady called me just to talk to me, like they're doing a little story on it. Excuse me. And the reporter was like, do you have a lot of these T-shirts? And I was like, yeah, we printed like 4 dozen. We have a bunch of them, you know? To me, like, yeah, we have so many. Like, I've got 12 smalls, 12 mediums. We're covered. And she laughed out loud at me. And I still remember her going, there's a train coming. You don't even know it, but there's a train coming. You should start printing right now. And I was like, And the next day, we were scheduled to go up to Cleveland because our friend worked at Jack Prince. We were going to go up and look at some presses and stuff. And I opened up my email, and these orders just are going like, I was like just kept going.
Yeah.
And I was like,
because of what was in the paper, like,
yeah.
Oh, wow.
And we had a website up that I'd built so you could buy stuff, and it was like, we were selling our own stuff. But It was just like, you know, super punk rock, like hilarious shit. And then I was just like just watching it for like, I mean, easily like a minute of just like
orders pouring in.
It's the only thing we printed for like 3 months.
Really?
Every day.
Holy shit.
And then I'm like, you know, and it's this whole thing of like, we should sub this out to somebody with an auto. And I'm like, that's not what we do.
Yeah.
We're artists. We're screaming. And then I was like, yeah, I got to find a guy with an auto. You know? So it was.
Did you guys get that to Mike Tomlin? Did he ever like?
I'm sure he saw it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was.
He never like pulled up or anything like that.
Yeah. It wasn't like that. I think that it was. You know how he is very just.
Yeah.
So I think
business.
That like, yeah, and the beauty of like we were kind of careful on that one because there was no real that I saw. There was no real copyright issues.
Yeah.
It was definitely inspired by a photograph that we had seen. So it's the exact same story that Shepard Fairey came through, but we weren't like, no, you know. It's
isn't there like a thing where it's like you change like, you know, whatever percentage of the image and it's considered.
No. That's what everyone believes.
Yeah.
But
the internet's fucked up because you look at stuff like that. I made a clothing company back in 2011, 2012. Yeah. And, you know, you're looking and you're trying to research this stuff online and you see one thing and then you see the other and you just like don't really know where you could go with it.
Yeah. Well, we had an attorney, and I remember asking him like they had a division of intellectual property. And I said the same thing you said, and he goes, no, it's intent. It's like intent. It's like intention.
Yeah.
Why would someone buy your shirt? And if you are trying to look like you are representing that thing based on their brand or trademark or whatever, because like we never got a cease and desist on that one, and we don't run it. We stopped running it just because I'm like, that was odd. But after it was over, like we made one that just said, yes, we did. Yeah. And it just had a silhouette of the Lombardi trophy. And like as soon as we won, I have a projector and we're projecting it 3 stories on the building across, and people were like, yes, it was awesome. Cause we're like 20th and Carson, and like dudes are out there. It was awesome. It was so fun. But like within 12 hours we had a cease and desist because like that,
really? That
just
quick?
The silhouette of that trophy is trademarked.
Yeah.
So nothing that we had done before. So I started talking to my lawyer, and some of the designs we had were pretty funny, but he goes, man, you guys have this amazing ability to walk right up the line and not cross it. Yeah. So
I mean, that's a good thing to have.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a good thing to have.
Yeah. There's definitely some times where you're like,
so you said 2006 to 2011, you were up in there.
Yeah.
And you know, like, what's the next step?
So I used to, ride my mountain bike around the Southside all the time, and there was this warehouse pretty much under the Birmingham Bridge. Like if you're standing here looking down, it's right there. And it was abandoned. Like it looked like somebody had thrown a hand grenade in it. And I ended up tracking down the guys, the recycling company beside it, and asking about it. And they're like, "Oh, we own that." And I asked them, "Could we rent this?" Like, and I talked to them, and he's like, "Nobody's interested in this place. Like, you gotta." And we signed a triple net lease, which is like, you own the building. You know, with a triple net lease, it's like technically by all accounts. So if the roof caved in, that's our roof to fix. You know, that kind of stuff. It's not ideal. But we got it cheap as shit, you know. And so we went in, and me and my dad went in and just hammered it out, you know, like cleaned it, and like he painted the floors. And
is that where you guys are now still?
No. So in 2016, I went over because we put an HVAC system. We were getting ready to put an HVAC system in. It's all getting, and I'd gone over to the landlord, and I was like, "Hey, is this building ever going to be for sale?" Because in my mind, I'm like,
you're investing so much into it.
I'm putting HVAC in. I got all this other stuff, you know, and we have another 3 or 4 years on our contract or on our lease. And he's like, "No," like it's, and in my head, I was like, "All right, cool." At least, you know, because I was thinking like maybe we could buy it, but there's no way I could buy that. But also like we're safe.
Yeah.
So we move our retail store in there. I start putting the HVAC in, or redo all the doors, and then he comes over and tells us he sold the whole city block.
No shit.
Yeah, and we have 6 months to get out. And I was like,
Jesus.
I was like, nah. I mean, we have 3 more years on this contract. So it was pretty cool. We got into some negotiation on that, and because it was triple net, like it's our building, like. So we were able to get not a great buyout, but a buyout to find someplace else. And so we had to have it in 6 months. We found the warehouse we have in West Warrington Avenue. Yeah. Which is just off 51, which is that building. Like when we got it, man, it was like, I've got pictures. It's like, it's horrifying. But
what year did you move into there?
That was 2017, because like we got the keys on January 17th. And in order to get the buyout money, we had to be out of that building on June 1st.
Yeah.
And so we were, but there was no power. Like we had to run all new power, all new water, like fix like we had to redo all the way. Like it was.
What was that building?
So at the time it was abandoned. But I talked to the real estate dudes, and I was like, "Hey, is that building like open?" And he goes, "Yeah, we actually had some people in there recently, but they're no longer there." And I was like, "Oh, cool. Can we look at it?" And he goes, "Yeah, but he's just humming around." I was like, "Is there something wrong with it?" He goes, "No, we just had to get rid of these. You'll see when we go in." So we're touring this place. It looked like the whole place looked like a murder den. But the guys that were there, I guess they were growing weed, and there was just leaves and shit everywhere. And they found out about it, so they had to kick them out.
That's awesome. That's a good story.
It was hilarious. Yeah. So we're just like, what the fuck, you know? And he goes, and he was like, you know, like I don't know if they're liable for whatever. He goes, they grew tomatoes in here. This was a tomato farm. Yeah. And I'm cracking up.
Winking at you while I say that.
These are pretty great tomatoes.
That's awesome.
But so and the cool thing is like it was RE360 up in Allentown, and they like people were like, "Oh, you got to watch out for those dudes." But like, man, the guy, like Joe, the guy that owns the place, it was straight up with me the whole way through. I'm like, and I told him like, "Listen, I need to lease this, but I want to buy it."
Yeah.
But I need you to let me lease it to you. And I was like giving him these ridiculous things. And I was like, and if by the end of December, if I don't have this taken care of and ready to buy, everything I give you is yours. And, you know, and then I'll just rent it. And it's absurd. And I can't believe I don't know. It made sense in my head, but now I'm looking back, I'm like, what's wrong with you, dude?
Yeah.
But he was totally cool. He's like, all right, cool. And we got in, and he just like, there you go.
Now at that point, you said that was 2017?
17, yeah.
Now at that point, like you guys are pretty established in the city, and you do work with a lot of big brands in the city now. Like I know you got a lot of shit that's, you know, popping in the city. I mean, like what's your what's your presence in the city at that point? Like would you consider yourself established? You have a name for yourself at that point?
It's one of those things, man. I don't know if you're like me, but I'm you know, I worked in a basement. I work in I'm like this a lot.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at numbers, you know, and we're existing, and it's not like we're rolling in money or anything like that, but like we all have jobs.
Yeah.
We all have decent money. Like our guys are being taken care of as well as we can. And so I wasn't really looking like, yeah, we're fucking, we're killing it. But it was like, this is working.
Yeah.
And so whenever we moved into the new warehouse, like, we started like, we used the buyout for that, but then you just start like kind of rupturing money.
Yeah.
And you're like, so I kind of panic and I'm hiring people to do other stuff that we don't normally do. It's like, I think like, if we did this, we could also do this. And it was just a reaction to, I don't know, like kind of leading with fear, I guess. It was just like, and then once, my wife and I sat back and talked and just refocused on what we're doing and like really narrowed it down, like things started to make sense.
Yeah, like I saw on some of your posts, like you got to work with like the Steelers at some point, and it's like, when does the city start to acknowledge you as like a serious player in the game?
I don't want to be. Do they? Like,
I mean,
I'm joking. Like, it feels cool that like we're known and all that, but it's like, I feel like whenever, even in the Southside, whenever we would do something, like the news would show up.
Yeah. Okay.
Just to like we did, we would do shirts for, like, that huge snowstorm, like Snowmageddon, when that hit. Everybody's business went down, and I'm like, so we just started having like parties, and like we made a T-shirt just said Snowmageddon, and we're like, hey, we're dying this week. Like, please come on Thursday, free beer, like whatever. And so we had like a keg out back in the parking lot, just stuck in the snow. And because we're on the South Side, everyone can walk. Yeah. Well, that turned into an awesome thing. It's like all these people came out because they're trapped inside. So we're all just hanging out, having an awesome time, printing T-shirts, screwing around. Well, then the paper runs a story on it. It was really cool, So then that gets some hype. And it was really neat to see like how people are reacting to that. And then a lot of our, the only advertising we're even doing is really through social media. So like we're getting a really strong following there. I think that like the time that I realized that people were actually watching us, this would have been like 2013. A bunch of the craft beer people in Pittsburgh got together and started Craft Beer Week. Yeah. Just to like highlight that there's this happening in Pittsburgh. And at the time, I don't know, there's maybe like 20 or 30 breweries, at most. But they want to like highlight that, and they have state people that are going to like can measure like the impact it's having and all this, which is really cool. And I'm going to some of the meetings because they want us to help brand it. And they're like, can you think of any cool events? And I was like, yeah, man, if you guys will supply beer, I can come up with events all day. So we had, the first one we had was like the T-shirt art show, where we just hung clotheslines through our whole building, and then just invited all the screen printers, all the artists that make T-shirts, just to hang them on the clotheslines, and just, you sell it, keep your money, whatever. And then these brewers would come with their beer and let people try it.
That's cool.
It was dope. It was so much fun. Like, that was such a cool event. And then the next year I was like, you guys need to do it on the Clipper. Like, you need to get bands, and they're like, we can't afford that. Can you do it? And I was like, I can't afford it. But I was like, but if you guys will support me doing it, I'll do it. And I went home and talked to my wife, and this is like kind of like the nightmare story that I tell a lot, but it's like, I talked to my wife and I was like, hey, here's how many tickets I have to sell. I think we can do this. I'm pitching this whole thing, and she goes, all right, well, what do you need to know? I'm like, I need to put it against our house. Like, I need to like, Jesus. So she's like, all right. And so I put it up against our mortgage. And I'm hyping it because I'm afraid, it's going to work. I'm like on Twitter back in time, like, oh, tickets going to sell this date. And then it starts going, and it's like, right as it goes to go, like, I built the site, I built the ticketing app, all this stuff. And right as it goes to go live, the site goes down. And I'm freaking out, and I'm calling the host, what's going on? He's like, you're getting a spike right now of people hitting it. And it keeps coming up, and I'd see it. And we had this ticketing app for his WordPress site, and we could sell 350 tickets is what we needed to sell to like break even. And Corey, my like we've worked together. He's like first employee. He's like our production manager. He walks in. He goes, "It was like 1 minute hadn't even passed yet." He goes, "Dude, you've already sold 250 tickets."
Really?
I was like, "Oh shit!"
God damn.
So it went up to like it hit the 350 like instantly, and I'm like, "Oh god!" And then the site completely went down and came back up. And when it did it, it reset the ticketing app to 0. So it's sold out again.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
So there was like 700.
Just people.
What's the cap on the Gateway Clipper?
For what I'm doing, I was trying to fill 350 plus. It was going to take 100 people to run the thing.
Yeah.
So you can put 600 people on a boat.
Wow.
Without.
So you're already over capacity.
Oh, so far. And it's just like, and people are tweeting at me. It's like, what the hell's going on? I was like, please, and I'm having this conversation. So this is the first time I realized people are looking at us. And I was like, I'm going to take care of this for everybody. Just please hang on.
Yeah, bear with me.
Hang on. We got this. And I remember walking down to the Clipper, and I forget, man. It was like, because the Clipper's expensive as shit to do. And they're great people, but
I know. I got to get with someone on there. I got to interview someone from the Clipper.
It's amazing. But I go down. I'm like, I got a very unique problem. They're like, what? I go, I got a shitload of money and I need a bigger boat. And they're like, we don't have a bigger boat.
What do you do? Add a second day?
And I was like, so, and I'm like, can I get 2 trips then? And I'm like, yeah. So we just did it back to back. So it went out for 3 hours because it's 1 hour on each river. And then it came back, docked, everyone got off, more people got on, and everybody on the site. And I'm like, hey, here's what they're going to do. Oh my God, they're going to do this, and tagging the Clipper, and like, thank you for this. And the people are working with me, and then the people are tweeting, and it's like,
that's dope.
You feel like you're having a conversation with the city.
Yeah.
And it's like, the cool thing is like, I completely failed. It's like, what? But then I'm also like, I owned it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey, we're going to take care of this. Hold on. And then the people even more were supporting it. Like, oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, because you figured it out, and you're not just like, letting people just like burn on there.
Oh, yeah.
You're just figuring it out.
Oh, and we lost money on it.
What year?
That was 2013. And we've done it every year since, so it's pretty cool. It's called the Beer Barge. It's a good time, but you should come this year. You should.
Yeah, when is it?
It's this year. It'll be April 26th from 7 to 10. It's a Saturday.
Yeah, fuck yeah, I'm there.
If you want to do it, you'd be my guest. It'd be awesome.
That's dope. Man, that's cool to hear that. Like,
it was horrifying, but it was cool. Yeah.
I bet in the time, in the moment, you're like, what is going on? But like now you kind of got a gauge or like how you could do it. You figured it out, but obviously, the first time it got to be insane back then.
And also, it was. Oh, I can't explain the level of stress that I hit, but it was like, it's like, because we've always done events for our stuff, so it's like, any event is just like, what's the day? What's going to happen? Who's coming? Yeah. You can't control the event. You can only control what goes into it. It's like just how, and just try to make sure people have fun. And like, because the story leading up to it was so freaking weird, the vibes on that thing were so cool. Yeah. Like everybody was like,
it sounds like a unique experience. You know, it didn't sound like there was a lot of things like that.
Yeah, it was good, especially at the time. Because nobody. And I'm like, why aren't people doing this? And I was like, I can see why. But
now talk to me about like being part of the union.
So that came out.
Like when did that happen?
So that we actually ratified our contract in 2020. But like, so the whole thing about the union is like, I grew up, Western PA. I grew up my dad was in the union. Like,
what did he do for work?
He was worked for the gas well.
Okay.
So, and then my uncles, like they're miners and stuff like that. So it's like very Western PA jobs. And it wasn't like it's just like, it was part of like no different than anything else. Like you have union meetings or whatever, and you just hear it. So it's like, you always know that the union is taking care of the workers, So it was something that you just hear in the back of my head. So when Shannon and I started hiring people, I was like the first name of our company, like before I started like screen printing and stuff, like in 2001, my freelance, I was starting to call it Union Media, just because like for all these reasons. But like once we started Commonwealth Press and we started hiring people, like I had this idea of like, okay, so throughout this whole thing, I want to be proud of this place. Like, and if I'm not, like, if I didn't own it, I wouldn't want to work there. So like I start figuring out like, how do I make this not just like, hey, look at us, we're doing cool stuff, but like legitimately watching out for our people and ourselves, and like we're all in this together. So how do we make this the best possible thing? And I started thinking like, well, the union used to watch out for that shit. So I'd be like, well, what's the union standards? And I'd start like, okay, let's check these boxes. So as soon as we could do $15 an hour minimum wage, that's what we did. And like, as soon as we could do healthcare, that's what we did. And as soon as we could add to that, we did. And like, now our dudes have retirement with matching plans, and like everything that we've done along the way has been to be like, I don't want to say nobody wants to work, but like, I don't even want to work. You know what I mean? like, that's a job. And there's days when I hate it too. But like, if we have to, what's the best possible situation so that when you're going to work, you're not like, fuck, I don't want to be here.
Exactly.
You know? And it's been like that. I know that people have hated working there, but it's like, it's all been part of this thing we've been trying to build. So like, once we got these things together, we're starting to do some business. And then I have a good friend of mine who does a lot of these bigger like jobs that like needed a union bug on it. In order to be, you know, like there's a little bug that's printed with that right there. Yep.
Yeah, this is printed from.
Oh, I know. I saw.
Yeah, you guys printed this.
I saw it when I walked in. But so in order to put that bug on, that means this place is a union, and by being union, that means that this is what's, you know. So it's kind of this thing where, you know, your people are being taken care of. So a lot of it was because of these union work. So this guy came, you know, my friend came in and he's like, you know, after probably like the third or fourth one, like huge job. I saw him like a couple weeks later. I was like, where did that go? Like, where did that job go? And he goes, oh, we had to send it up to some shop in Massachusetts. I was like, why didn't you do it here? And he's like, there's no union print shop in Pittsburgh. I was like, what? So I started doing some research, and there wasn't one in Pittsburgh. In fact, there's not one in Pennsylvania. So I was like, and it's because screen printing is such a low entry point of like,
yeah,
you know, and it's not a place where you can start somebody out at like $80 an hour.
Yeah, like,
you know,
union wages where you think of like, you know, manual labor type of shit.
Yeah, and it's not that, because like, and you have to compete with people that are paying their dudes minimum wage, and I'm not trying for that business. I'm trying for like people that understand what we're trying to do, and our prices are higher than other people's. Not a lot, but like they are, because that shirt was printed by somebody that has healthcare.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And when something happens, like we've had dudes that have had to take like 6 months off for different things, and it's like they're covered, you know? So this whole thing, it means a lot, but it's also like something that like other unions like are contractually obligated to try to support. So like we try to support them, they try to support us, and it's really cool so that thing rises together. So I start doing some research of just like, what does this mean for an owner? Because like usually a union happens when workers are being exploited.
Yeah. And say mistreated.
Right. And so it's not like, I'm always trying to clarify that's not why this happened, but you know, so I pitched it to the dudes. I was like, you guys should consider union, you know, like unionizing. He was like cracking up about it. But I was like, no, seriously. Like, and so they agreed to it, and I called the union rep. And this is another story I tell a lot, because it cracks me up that like, I called this dude and I was like, hey, you know, this is after almost a year of research of like talking to arbitrators and lawyers and like people. Like, I talked to this one dude out of Texas, and he's like, you're doing what? Why would you do that? And I was explaining to him, and he's like, that's ridiculous. Like, no. Wait, where are you again? And I said, Pittsburgh. He goes, oh yeah, never mind, do it.
Yeah.
I was like, why'd you say that? He goes, that's still a union city. Like, people still care. And I was like, that's awesome. So when the dudes agreed, I called the local union rep, and I was like, hey, we want to unionize. And he's like, how many of you in the shop? Like, how many people want to do it? And I was like, 100%, all of us. He goes, wow, that's awesome.
How many employees you got?
Including my wife and I, there's 14 of us.
Okay.
So we were bigger before COVID, we were 27.
Yeah.
But like I can get into that. But I was like, yeah, everybody's like, you got to be careful, man. If your boss finds out, you guys can all get fired. And I was like, I'm the owner.
Yeah.
You know, and he's like, why would you do that? And I was like, oh, I mean, where do you get your shirts printed?
Yeah.
And he just got quiet, you know. And I was like, listen, man, I'm not trying to like, but if we would do this, I think that like you would feel like we could keep those jobs in the city. And he's like, yeah, holy crap, man.
Yeah, I don't want to speak for him, but the Pittsburgh Scanner, you know, I'm good buddies with him. That was the reason he got it printed from you, is because it's a union. You know,
I love it.
He's part of a union, and it's just, you know, you want to keep that. It's so interesting, and the reason I even asked you about it is because, you know, whenever you talk about being in a union, it's almost comes with like a negative connotation from like from the upper. Of course, the upper end.
And it is.
Because even like my father-in-law, he was part of a union. His boss was a fucking asshole. Yeah. And it was basically, you know, a safe a safeguard for the people that are in the union, but it's interesting as an owner to hear why that was established in your business. But, it makes sense because like you want your employees to be able to, live a life that is, secure and, have resources for them.
And like you can tell somebody that all day.
Yeah.
But like, I'm like, hey, I will, legally bind myself to that.
Yeah.
And you lay a piece of paper on the table. Like if I don't live up to my word, I'm in violation of this.
Yeah. Call me on my shit.
Right. Because like, I want this place to be like, I don't want to just say I want it to be, I want it to be.
Yeah.
So it's like, and that helps keep my feet to the fire too, to be like, like I'm going to make this place the best possible place that I can. But also you have a vested interest in it too.
Yeah.
Like that union rep, like I was saying earlier, he goes, you could lose control of your shop. And I was like, I don't control this shop. Like I've been with these dudes, like, Corey's worked there 19 years. You know what I mean? So it's like, these dudes are like, and I say this too, it's like family, like, it's not family, it's like, I hate when I hear jobs like family. It's like, we're a team, a solid fucking team.
Yeah.
And it's like, if this person is doing well, this person's doing well.
Yeah,
so
because
like,
some families,
that's what I'm saying. So
you know what I mean?
You hear that's like, we're like a family, like, you poor thing. But so like that's
cool though. So that was established, you said in what year? 2020?
2020 is so we ratified the contract February of 2020. And then 1 month later I had to, like, we shut down. Like I thought it was the end of our company.
Yeah.
And it was, but here
we are, 2025.
Yeah, just slow. Yeah, and when we broke, we brought people back like almost one at a time. There was like a core of 5 of us, and I remember meeting with us, and we're all standing during COVID, not knowing what's going on in a circle. And I was like, we don't need to exist.
Yeah,
like we just make T-shirts. It's not. I don't want anybody to be in danger. Everyone can survive. But like, do you guys want to try this? And like everyone's like, yeah, dude, let's figure this out. And so we just built it back, and that's the whole thing, is like just trying to keep that thing as strong as possible without getting big.
Yeah,
because like. My friend Craig once said he used to work for a big ad agency. And he goes, when you're skating down a hill and you start to get speed wobbles?
Yeah, speed wobble.
I was like,
yeah. Like, shit, what's gonna happen?
Yeah. And he goes, I feel like, because he managed, he's like, when we get to X amount of employees, I start to get speed wobbles. I was like, oh shit, me too. And I figured that number. And so it's like, like we crossed, like I said, we have retail stores and part-timers and full-timers. And it was just chaos. I mean, we had seamstress on, we had like carpenter. It was just nuts. And it just felt like it was all falling apart because I'm trying to make this.
A lot of moving parts.
Right. But it's like, you're always taught, like, it's got to be big. It's got to be big. And
when does the retail store in Mount Lebanon come into play?
So we've always had a retail store, even when it was like, just hanging the shirts in the window. So we had the one in the Southside for a long time. It stayed where Zed's is until we left. And then once we moved to the new building, we did a pop-up in the airport, and that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then once that was done,
like how does something like that happen? Like, do you approach them?
They approached us. So a lot of this stuff is just like someone reaching out to us and be like, hey, do you want to do this? Like, yeah, sure.
Yeah, because I mean, it's cool. If you look at your social media, you see that there's a lot of cool stuff. Like I saw, Mark Cuban wearing your shirts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's cool to see that. And as a business owner, for you to kind of work in tandem with like Eaton Park and stuff like that.
Dude, yeah.
And whatever you feel about Eaton Park as a Pittsburgher, it's like, those are one of the big names.
Oh my God.
And to be able to have that validation of these brands that have been around forever that are, pivotal in the name of Pittsburgh.
Yeah, people know it.
I mean, I swear I just got chills thinking about it because it's like such a cool, it got to be cool as a business owner.
Well, and you'll see these like Turner's trucks driving around.
Yeah.
And when you see like we've designed some of those trucks, but there's like 2 or 3 that we designed because they were box trucks to look like an orange crate.
Yeah.
And when you see that going, it's like, it's still like, even though our shop did it, I'm still thinking like, that's cool.
Yeah.
Not just that we did it, but that's cool. I'm stoked that we did it, but it's neat to see that brand with our design on it. It's cool.
Yeah. The one in Mount Lebanon though, that's a cool store there.
I spun off on that. Sorry. Yeah. So after the airport, we found the space that the people there were leaving, and we had moved to Mount Lebanon. And when we were in the Southside, that store was because we lived in the Southside. That's our neighborhood.
Yeah.
And we want to be, we're super community minded. So when we moved to Mount Lebanon, I was like, it'd be cool to have one here. My kids are going to be going to school here, so we found this space and then just started to open up and see what they'd think. And we're like, I don't know, man. Mount Lebanon has this reputation. I don't know if we're going to fit in here. And the second we opened it up, man, it was just like slam. And people were, and like, Badamas was across the street, and it was like, there's so much cool things happening, man.
Yeah, he wanted to stay there. We talk all about it in this episode.
Yeah. It's heartbreaking. And when he left, I'm like, man, they don't even realize how big of a hit that is to this neighborhood. Yeah. Because that was just like the best.
Yeah, he talks about it. And it's interesting to, he talks about how great that, that stretch is, and, all the different businesses that are around there. But ultimately, the guy just wanted to buy his own building. He didn't want to keep investing in stuff.
And they wouldn't work with him. Yeah. I don't know the story of it, but like.
He talks all about it. Episode 300.
I can't wait. I can't wait to. But listening to like when he moved, and I remember watching, Dormont, just like that little street blowing up. And I'm like, man, should we, I'm telling my wife, we should start looking down there. And then I'm like, nah, this is our community. I'm staying here. But like,
that's cool though.
That was a loss.
Yeah, it's cool though to be like, think about like, you being in Southside, wanting to have that there, and you living, like being where you live, that's like ultimately what you want, is like to be, an asset to the community that you're in. That's been a
thread, like the red string through the whole thing is just like, everything we've ever done has been part of like who, because like, like going to shows, that's a community. Yeah. You operate within this community, and you just try to do good for the people that are there. And then like you start a business, and it's like, that's no different. Yeah. You're just like trying to get people to come to your show. It's like, you come here, it's like, that's awesome. You just want them to be stoked on your work. And then as you grow, it's like nothing changes. Yeah. So
what are your goals?
I mean, legitimately, I just want to keep this thing being strong. I want to make sure that we're building something that like is self-sufficient, and it is. And this year, like this past year, we've done some really cool things that I'm really stoked about. Like I've been doing this research for the 4-day work week. For like, it's not like 410s. It's like the whole Norwegian work less, paid the same. Yeah. And so we did a test all last year. Doing a 4-day, and you get paid a day off every week if we hit these numbers. And it was unreal. Like, it's one of the most profitable years we've had. And just because like, wow. Yeah, it's weird. So like this year, so that was 4 9s. So you work 4 9-hour shifts. And then if we hit our numbers, Friday's off, half of it's paid. This year, we're going to, on April 1st, we test the 8-hour. So it'll be 4 8s. So you work 32, paid for 40. And the results are amazing because it's like, it's less somebody being like, why are you late? That kind of shit. And it's more just like the whole team being like, yo, man, we got stuff to do.
Yeah, let's come together. Let's get this work done.
But also, and let's get the hell out of here. Yeah. Because like, I'm not saying like my life is my work. So I'm not saying I want to be at work because I love that building and I'm always there just like,
yeah, but realistically, you're a human being that's like, wants to enjoy your time.
Get the hell out. So like 8 hours here, 8 hours at home, 8 hours of sleep. Nobody gets 8 hours of sleep. But like that whole thing is like fascinating to me. So I tell everyone before we start, like we have to realize like time's all we got. So like, let's make this efficient so we can get out. And I've worked in sweatshops, and that's not what I'm trying to run. So it's like, I'm talking to the printers, like, how can we make this, even if it's like shaving a couple minutes off of like, how do we tear this down more efficiently? Yeah. So that like nobody's running, nobody's doing shit, but it's like more efficient. And then that buys a little more time. And then when you catch up, rather than just like getting on your phone and pissing around, like walking over and be like, hey, can I help you with this? And so you really get this, like I said, teamwork mentality that like,
be more efficient.
And the payoff isn't just like, hey guys, let's be more efficient. It's like, if we do this, you get a paid day off every day or every week. Yeah. So that's like 52 extra paid days off a year. And it's like,
I'm sure everyone listening would wish that their boss would do something like that. And even allow that thought to be something that they would even, think about.
Well, one of the newer dudes had said, why don't we just work Friday and make more money? And I was like, what part of that goes to you? Like, we could, but like there's no science in this, but I have this theory of like, so on your weekend, you've got 2 days. So it's like one day you're winding down, one day you're winding up mentally. But if you put a day in the middle where you're just flat, one day down, actually relax, one day back up. Yep. And then when you're coming in, you're working with dudes that are like, what's up, man? How was your weekend? Let me grab that for you. You know? It changes the whole vibe in my head. of like why you want to get stuff done. And I've busted my ass for like this company's 23 years, but like last week I'm just like this year, had some loss at the beginning of the year, and it was just like, you know, some friends, parents would go and stuff. You hit that age, and I just needed time. And I remember telling the dudes, I'm like, hey, I'm gonna take a couple days and just roll. I'm gonna go out in the woods and stuff. And they're like, later. Not a problem. Like, I come back, everything's taken care of because they know what they need to. Everyone that works there is the expert of what they do.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, man. Well-oiled machine.
I hope so. We're trying to get there, but it's like there's still things to put in place, and I get real, you know, stoked about it. But
that's awesome to be able to, like, you know, I'm a control freak, and I have a lot of less moving parts with what I'm doing here. Mm-hmm. That's why I literally do everything myself. Schedule, edit, post, all that shit. Yeah. I'm just like a control freak about it. But for you to, you know, build this company with your wife and be able to forfeit some of that responsibility whenever you need to take that time and for it to still be able to function where you're not like, you know, in the woods trying to, you know, take a break, but still like, you know, fucking worrying about stuff, you know, mentally, you know, physically you're on a break, but mentally, you know, you could be like, you know, stressing about work, but for you to be able to be out there and know that like you could depend on the team that you have to make things run, you know, that's a beautiful thing.
Oh, it's the only thing you could ever really ask for.
Yeah.
You know, like, and I'm stoked for it. I couldn't be more grateful.
Yeah.
But like, and you know, like years and years ago, I remember taking a backpacking trip with some friends in Southern Virginia. We're like on the Appalachian Trail, like no cell service at all. We climbed the top of McAfee Knob, and it's the first time we have a bar, and I open up just to make sure everything's okay. And the only thing I could get was a video that one of my employees had sent of the front of our building with the sidewalk blown open and water shooting straight up in the air. And I was just like, literally, I can do nothing about this. I don't know what's happening. None of the texts were coming through, and then it locked up, and I couldn't. So I'm just like, this moment of like, you know, legitimate stoicism. I'm like, I have no control over this. But also, why did you send me that?
Yeah.
You know, I have no control. And it's like, when I get back, you know, Corey had taken care of it.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, I love when somebody comes up like, here's the problem, here's how I solved it, you don't got to worry about it. I love
fuck
it.
Yeah.
Rather than like,
yeah, like, what am I going to do? I'm just floundering in place.
You know, so I love that. I love the people that I'm working with are just, like, we're building this team that, like, everybody is just ungodly competent at what they do. Like, we just hired this new dude. He's been with us for a couple months now. His name's Jules. He used to run
Public.
Oh, dude is like, I feel bad saying this publicly, but that dude is just solid gold, man. I don't public display of affection on a dude that I just met, but like, holy shit.
Yeah, I saw that I saw him post that he ended up working with you there.
He just sent an email out of the clear blue. It was like, hey, I'm thinking about shutting my shop down. I think I could bring some value to your place. And it was just like one of the best emails I've ever gotten. And I was like, this dude's legit. And then I started talking to people that are sandwiched between us. Yeah. And like, listen to the way they talk about him. And I was like, and that dude is like, it's between Corey, who I've worked with for 19 years, and Jules, and again also Dave Colley. Those three dudes are just like, yeah. I mean, my whole team is like solid, and I'm not talking any shit on it. Like, I don't want to leave anybody out, but those three dudes in leadership positions are just... Yeah,
I know Dave, too. That's,
everybody. Dave's like the center of Pittsburgh sometimes. You know, like everybody knows him.
Yeah, everyone in that community kind of just like, you know, we all have mutual friends, so it's cool.
Plus, Pittsburgh's that big, you know? So
I know. It's a perfect size. It's really the perfect size city. You know, the more and more that I'm you know, meeting all these different people of all these walks of life, it's a perfect size city because you could really have an opportunity to grow a network. Oh, my God. Like, if you're in, you know, California, you know, it's a bunch of small fish in a big ass pond. Sure. But we're perfect here. Yeah. You know, you could do some good stuff here.
Yeah, and you're like 1 degree of separation from everybody. You know?
Yeah, like, man, I'm trying to. Like, I try to really, like, you know, be diverse on like all the different people that I talk to, from like, you know, venue owners, coffee shops, you know, park rangers, stuff like that.
Sally Wiggin.
You already know Edgar Snyder was in that seat you're sitting in.
Holy crap.
What about some people that you guys got opportunities to work with? Like, what are some projects that you're like real proud of that you were like stoked on?
Most recently that Steelers job we're doing. Like, yeah. This is like,
I mean, that's epic.
Dude,
you know?
It's like the third season, and the way that happened too, shortly after COVID, I get a phone call from a dude, you know, and he's like, "Hey, this is so and so marketing company from the Steelers," and I was like, "Yeah, right." You know, I think it's one of my friends like messing around. I asked him, I'm like, "Can you email me?" Like, I just want to see your. Yeah. And it was like I was like, "Oh shit, dude, I'm sorry," you know, but it was awesome. They're just super cool, like forward thinking, and they're like, "Hey, we want to do a poster series. We want you guys to design posters for every home game or something, you know, like that." And I was just like, "Man, that sounds awesome. We should work with local artists to do that, so that like we'll hype it, you'll hype it, their people will follow." So it's like this real self-feeding circle. It was such a cool conversation. And then I was like, why'd you reach out to me? And it was like those moments where the guy's like, "Well, we're talking to all these different people in the city, and like, well, if you're going to do that, you got to talk to Dan at Commonwealth." And I was like, dude. Not just Commonwealth, but he said like Dan. I was like,
incredible.
Damn, dude. You know, so it's like we're really doing like put a lot of effort into like bringing different diverse styles of art and all this other stuff. And it's been so much fun, but it's also like the Steelers, you know, like.
Yeah, and to have someone, you know, to have a business that you built up from the ground and have your name be thrown into conversation with those types of conversations is like, you know, what more can you want?
Yeah, nothing.
Fucking Steelers, like, come on. That's I know, right? Yeah, that's the lifeblood of the city.
It's so, yeah, and that's something my wife glommed onto when we first moved here. She didn't have any teams because, like, Virginia's got maybe, you know, at the time Washington, but she loved, like, she could not love a team more than the Steelers. So, like, just the way that she glommed onto that and the way that this is working, it's just been, it almost feels like, I don't know, I don't want to use the word surreal, but it just seems like,
yeah, man,
somebody's running this thing. You know? That's
dope. You think there's anything that I didn't, that I like passed over with the business or anything?
I'm sure there's a ton, but I'm like all caffeinated and I'm probably just talking in circles. So
that's all right.
I do apologize, but this is your fault, man.
That's all right. Yeah, I'm glad. We gotta, I mean, I need it too. Now, all right, so
yeah, it's.
I know
the sun came up.
I can't believe that I really can't believe the snow. But okay, so the ending segment that I do with everyone on this podcast is an ending segment called Desert Island Questions.
All right.
All right, Desert Island Questions. Whenever I give each guest 3 categories to take with them on a desert island, use until they starve to death and die. Okay, first category is 3 movies. So picture this. You're on a desert island like Tom Hanks in Castaway. You get one small TV with 3 DVDs that you have for the rest of your life. What are the movies that you love?
So this one is it's funny because as soon as you started saying that, I instantly went to movies because it's like when I used to live with my buddy John in West Virginia, we didn't have cable, we didn't have shit. We had a VCR.
Yeah.
And we had like, so all I ever watched was I had a copy of Robert Crumb's documentary Crumb. It's just like this artist from the 70s. And I've watched it so many times that I can like voice along with it.
Yeah.
Maybe that will drive me insane because like I'll take it. But Robert Crumb, like Crumb, the documentary, Robert Crumb, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Because
amazing.
that was the other one that we always used to just.
What a film.
Oh my God. It was just so.
You watched Severance?
Huh?
Are you familiar with Severance?
So here's the thing. I started it, and because it was about work at a bad time, like not a bad time, but like I just didn't want to watch a thing about work.
Yeah.
But now everybody that I trust is asking me to watch it.
Yeah, it's one of them things that like I had to start because you know I get FOMO about certain things. Like Breaking Bad was FOMO. I had to watch, or not Breaking Bad, but Better Call Saul. So I watched that. Ended up being great.
Yeah.
The only thing that I've still held off on is Game of Thrones, but Severance is fucking wild.
I'll watch it.
I mean, don't really know what's going on, but John Turturro is in it, and like, I mean, incredible in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Oh my God, and the way that they use him, like the Coen brothers use him so often, but
yeah.
And then probably just because of again its repetition with my wife and I, like Oh Brother, Where Art Thou is one, but also The Life Aquatic.
Oh yeah,
like
Steve Zissou.
We watched that so much, like, and I don't realize how much our relationship is so in like it's so many like inside jokes. But there are things that I didn't even realize are from that movie that we have taken over so much that, like,
yeah.
And I watch it, you know, I'll watch it again, and it's like, we stole that.
Yeah.
You know, so that's off the cuff. So
that's all right.
I'll hold those 3.
That's the goal. I don't want people to put too much pressure on to like thinking about this stuff. That's why I don't tell people these ahead of time. Yeah. Okay. So second category is books. If you had to take 3 books, you know, you don't need to be 3. If you got a couple favorites.
Oh yeah, I have tons. Bluebeard by Kurt Vonnegut. That's my favorite book. It's the only book I've read more than twice. Like, I love that book.
What's the premise of it?
It's a fake It's a fake biography of a abstract painter.
Okay.
And just his story and the way Kurt Vonnegut writes usually involves like aliens and time travel and all this other stuff, but this doesn't. It's just like this really cool direction, and I just love the way that they like. I love books that really carry character development.
Yeah.
So I would go with Bluebeard first from Kurt Vonnegut. Confederacy of Dunces. Have you ever read that book?
Mm-mm.
It's a really cool story. The guy that wrote it committed suicide, and had thrown it in the garbage, and his mother found it, and it ended up winning like a Pulitzer Prize. It's just like this ridiculous. It's like
fiction.
Yeah, and it's one of the few books I've laughed out loud reading it because it's just so absurd. But it's just about this big dude in New Orleans, like
Confederacy of Dunces,
ranting about like life, and it's just I haven't read it. Like I read it a while ago. I want to reread it just to see if it holds up.
Who wrote it?
O'Toole, Joseph. I would have to look it up.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, Confederacy of Dunces. Yeah,
Confederacy of Dunces is a great book. And then, so I just read this book called Utopia for Realists, and it's just like I really liked it. And it's one of the I'll say it because it's one I just recently read. But it's about the thing that I like is just like right now as we sit at this table, everything is a choice. The way that we're living our lives, the way that like everything has been decided, and there's this like decision process that like here's what we should do. Here's how and so many of them are based on ridiculous concepts, and like a lot of this breaks those down into like why is this like that and how could this be different. And it's just like I really like the way that it dissects humanity into drives and motivations and exploitations, and so that's a really good book. And then years ago, I know I only said 3, but also there was this book. I'm not real big into like actual history, but there was one called Killer Angels that was written about the Civil War. So when I moved to Winchester, that town was the most captured town between the North and the South. They got to the point where the people would walk out to look downtown to see what flag was flying to know if they were Union or Confederate. And the guy that wrote this, it's another Pulitzer Prize, but he wrote it using the letters of the people that were writing back and forth. So it's a historical, accurate talk about the end of the Civil War and how it was lost, but from the point of view of the people that were fighting it. And it's just like,
that's sick.
It's so good. Like I remember just reading it like
Killer Angels.
I remember like forcing that on people for a while. Like,
yeah.
And like Confederacy of Dunces, I had one of my friends, I was like, dude, you should read this book. And I had gotten a paperback copy. Like my copy was just a shot of New Orleans, but his had this comic drawing of the guy that it's about. And I went to hand it to him. I was like, hold on. And I ripped the cover off and gave it to him. He goes, why'd you do that? I'm like, I think like this isn't what the guy looked like in my head.
Yeah.
And I think it would have ruined it for me. So I threw it away. And after it was over, he came up to me. He's like, I looked that up on the internet. You're right. That would have ruined it. I was like, yeah, you have to have, his name's Ignatius. Like you have to have your own version of him because you can put parts of these people in your life that annoyed you into this guy.
Yeah.
It's like, it makes it
I'm a
so
new
much
reader.
funner.
Like I never read growing up at all. So, 2 years ago I started reading.
What are you into?
I read all fiction, and I'm like, I've had FOMO with like all Stephen King shit and like, some other random stuff, but I mainly read just like weird, fucked up horror, type shit like that. Yeah. Thriller type stuff, but I'm like slowly, it just takes a long time. So I'm slowly crossing things off my list.
Well, Stephen King, that's a bold way to start because it's hard for me to read him because it's terrifying.
I like all different stuff.
Right.
My first book that grabbed me was a book called City of Thieves by David Benioff. You ever hear of that? Mm-mm. The premise is these guys that were they were Russians, and while the Nazis and everything were taken over, they were like in their little part of where they were, and they were like in their little town. Everything was like closed off, and they were like protecting their town from all these like Nazi invaders, and their younger kids, all the women and children were gone, and the younger boys were there, and they were like, at night they would be on top of like, just the buildings, like pretending to kind of like, be doing something. Yeah. And one of them gets captured for looting a dead Nazi soldier, and whenever he goes into the prison system, he would just assume that he was going to get killed because, there was no tolerance for it back then. Right. But the main dude was like, I'll give you a chance to like, get your life back. I want you to go and steal me a dozen of eggs because my daughter's getting married. So you have to cross enemy lines and like try to find this. And it sounds like such a weird premise, and I'm probably butchering it, but the book was like, it was so, as like someone who just never read, it was just like something that I could not put down. And like there's fucked up stuff in it. It's dark. It's like, somewhat historically accurate. And I don't know. It was like the first book that really like, put the hooks in me, that made me like want to just pick up the next one and the next one and the next one because, a good story in my head, because I'm a movie guy. Sure. I grew up watching movies and just loving movies, but a book, like I'm making these movies in my head while I'm reading it. It's just like so much cooler.
Well, I heard this quote one time that like, who wrote Clockwork Orange? Was it Aaron Burgess? Anyway,
yeah.
But there's only one version of his. But there's a million versions of his because we all got to create it. But there's only one version of Stanley Kubrick's.
Yeah.
So like you get to build these things in your head.
100%.
That like even years ago, a friend of mine's like, you should read this. It's just like, it was Cold Mountain. It was just like, so that book was awesome. And it was just like a syrupy but then when I watched the movie, I'm like, it was okay. Yeah. But like, it wasn't mine. Anymore, and now when I read that, I picture Jude Law rather than the dude that I had pictured.
I know, and it's sometimes it helps and sometimes it's worse. Like reading The Shining, like the guy on the cover of The Shining looks like the dad from Beethoven. I can't remember his name real quick, but reading watching The Shining, I've watched it before I read the book, and like the movie is great, but the book there's just so much more into it. God, yeah, and. Some instances it helps to be able to like, think of like, Jack Nicholson while you're reading along. But, if you think about, like I read Misery, it's like one of my favorite books. Oh, God. The movie was incredible. And I loved watching the movie growing up, and Kathy Bates was so good. But the book is like Annie is just so much more demented and like fucked up in the book that it just, it adds more to it. So it's like, the book is always better than the movie kind of.
And people always say that, almost sounds cliche, but that's why. It's because
100%. That's why.
And I just actually discovered. I met this couple, Tara and Liam. They're younger dudes in the Southside, but like, I was in a conversation with him, and he's like, "Oh yeah, my mom's a writer." And I was like, "Oh really? Does she have anything published?" He goes, "Yeah." And he says this book. It's called Sidle Creek, and like, I went out and bought it just to like check it out. But it's like a collection of short stories of just very like vignettes of very Appalachian, like
love that.
Oh my God. And it's
Sidle Creek.
And she is such a good writer, and like they're some of them are pretty, like dark, because it's like and I always put myself into this thing of like, I grew up in the woods, so like when you don't have a lot of influence coming in, like you create your own reality. And so you hear like bands like Drive By Truckers, their songs are like fucked up, but it's like, that's true because it could happen. And it has its own language. It has its own, but like when you're reading through this book, it's like Sidle Creek. Her name's Jolene McKellen.
Okay,
but it's such an easy read. Yeah, but I didn't realize at first it was like short stories. I'm like, how's this going to tie together? Yeah, I was like, oh shit,
that's cool though.
It's really good. I'm overly stoked on it. It's the one I'm currently reading, so it's
that's why it's weird that I feel like I had to read all the Harry Potter books just because of that. Even though that J.K. Rowling ends up being a piece of shit in real life, it's just like I remember having the book, the first one, whenever I was in like third grade and it came out, but I just like never read stuff, and now I'm like reading it as an adult after watching the movies hundreds of times, and like. I almost wish I could just go back to being an 11-year-old, reading that book and just like having my mind blown, because even as a 34-year-old adult, I'm like, these fucking books are sick. Like, like just the story of it all. It's I don't know. It's cool, but I'm in the thick of it.
Well, that like it's funny because my oldest daughter, my younger daughter is into it, but my older daughter is in English classes. And she was telling me the book she's reading, but back to back they had them reading Lord of the Flies, Fahrenheit 451, and Animal Farm. Yeah. And I was like, Jesus, dude, you need some respect. Like,
that's some heavy shit.
Like, constantly, and like, they're like, oh, they want us to read 1984. I was like, you can't do all those in a row.
Yeah,
like that's just
that's what I mean.
Dystopian. It's like you need a ray of sunlight in the middle of that. You know?
Yeah, thinking about it growing up, like I was thinking about it, like, you know, why I wasn't interested in reading growing up. And it's just like the stuff that they picked us while we're like, you know, 14, 15. Yeah. The only book that captured my attention was Watership Down.
Oh my God.
But like, how fucked up was it?
Right.
And then you watch the cartoon of it and you're like, Jesus Christ. But
that
like
scarred all of us as kids.
But it's like, you know, if they would have gave us opportunities to like, you know, read more like, you know, stuff that we were interested in.
Oh God, yeah.
You know, like The Old Man and the Sea, whenever I was like 15 years old, like, come on.
Yeah.
Like, it's not going to like stick with you, like, if I wanted to do stuff.
And even now, like, because if you read The Old Man and the Sea and you don't understand that was about like his work being torn to shreds by, like, who gives a shit?
Yeah.
You know, but I get that.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And also, like, I feel like like books that I've read, I haven't realized how they'll change when I get older. Like, when I was younger and I read On the Road with Jack Kerouac. So you're supposed to read this, and then it's so inspiring when you're younger. You're like, yeah, I just want to get on the road. I want to do, you know, and then I reread it as an adult, you know, like when I'm older, and I'm like, man, this guy's a dick.
Yeah.
Like all he did was abandon his friends and Mexican. It's like it changes like the way you look at it. It's like, you could have been a better friend, Jack. You know, but there's yeah, man, I'm stoked for you. 'Cause it's when you discover books on your own without being forced, like, I remember being forced to read Bluebeard in college, and I was like, but then read it again because we published it, and Kurt Vonnegut came to our thing, and I have a signed copy of it, and like,
that's awesome.
All of his little, like he has this like little signature that's like an asterisk. It's an asshole, and he like, and he on the one that I have, he signs his name and then drew an asshole. I was like, oh fuck, dude, that's awesome.
Is super cool.
It's so cool.
Yeah, man, books. I'm excited to get into it even more.
Yeah, that's the hard part. Is like, now you got this one, then
dude, I have so many on my to be read list. It's fucked up.
And that's the hard part is then I'm like I have to focus on this one, but then I got those 4.
Yeah.
It's like when we had those boxes in our old place, I that's why we'd give them away, because I'm like, if I don't get rid of these, I'm just like,
I know, I get so overwhelmed. Like, I'm so overwhelmed by the amount of stuff I have to read.
Oh my God.
But you know.
But and if you look at, but like, instead of have to, like, get to.
Yeah, I'm
overwhelmed by what I get to read, but it's just like, I just wish I could just take it.
Like, as a young kid, like 16 years old, I used to just go into like the bookstores and just like, you know, just buy like, you know, 10 books, and I just like never read them. So I just have a big ass Tupperware bin that I've been moving with every place. And my wife was like, why don't you fucking get rid of these? It's just taking up space. Yeah. And I was like, well, whenever the world ends and we're all sitting here like the road, you know, I could just have all these things that I know that I have to read, and you know, it'll be good. It'll be worth it.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But okay, so third category I'm interested is 3 CDs.
3 CDs.
Or albums, I should say.
All right. I mean, and this is like in perpetuity. So I got to sit with them. Probably Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon, Drive By Truckers, Decoration Day, and Avail, Over the James.
Okay.
So I've got this game I invented, and I'll play it with you right now. So the way you measure Doppler radar for the weather is you have these antennas in 3 different points, and it can predict what's going to happen because you have it's like a 3-point registration system.
Yeah.
So I started playing this with my friends. It'd be like, okay, Doppler radio, what are your 3 bands that if I were to say, hey, Chad's coming over, his 3 bands are da-da-da, that give you a good overview of who you are.
Yeah.
You know, because it's like, mine flat out is like, you know, punk rock, bunch of hillbillies, and some psychedelic weirdness.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, that gives a good sense of like, Dan's some weirdo.
It's literally why I ask these desert island questions. So like, we spend 2 hours talking about your life and how you got to where you are making print shops, but like this kind of adds some color to who you are.
So like, I'm saying that to you, and for everybody else, you should figure out those 3 bands so that you can be like, and I'll have, this pisses them off too, because I'll have my friends be like, oh yeah, the Grateful Dead, and I was like, well, you could push the Grateful Dead further out into this, so like you could get more of your. So when I tell them that they're wrong, they get pissed. But I like telling people they're wrong.
Yeah, That's all right.
Even if they're right.
Yeah, that's all right.
I like to argue.
Okay.
How about you? What do you
My bands? Dude, everyone asks me this, and I still don't have a good answer.
Yeah.
I think a concrete answer is Chiodo's All's Well That Ends Well. Currently, I've been pretty heavy into just spinning. There's this guy named Charles Wesley Godwin. He's from Morgantown, country artist. He has an album called Family Ties that came out a couple years ago. That's just like, he's not like a stereotypical like mainstream type of.
What's his name?
Charles Wesley Godwin. But he's just fucking dude that's in the hills.
Speaks to you.
Yeah, it's really incredible. I've had an opportunity to interview some of the band members just because all the musicians in his band are right up from Beaver County,
right?
So that, and then I'd have to just take probably Led Zeppelin, Early Days and Latter Days, right, just because kind of reminds me of my dad a good bit.
There you go.
Or honorable mention probably Stevie Ray Vaughan. But my answer changes all the time. It's like I force these people that I have in here to come up with answers, and I don't even have answers myself. That's what's funny about it.
Well, and the beauty too of like for me, for playing the radar game, is this isn't your favorite band and this isn't your favorite CD.
Yeah. It
just says how far out can you go into that genre that also crosses other shit that pulls it in as well.
Yeah.
Because it's just funny. Because like one of my friends was like, Fish, Grateful Dead. I was like, nah, man, if you say Grateful Dead, that covers Fish.
Yeah.
Because it's far enough out.
Yeah.
And I'm like, out, but it's funny.
Yeah, that's good. Okay. Third to last question that I ask everyone is called the Death Row Meal. Death Row Meal, before you get put to death, you get an appetizer, a main course, and a dessert. What is it?
Appetizer, So, I don't know, man. I could just go into Badano's and just go nuts. Just because we've gone in there and told Anthony just make us a pizza.
Yeah,
and he'll go. So I'll take his garlic knots, but with pepperoni roll could be a
pepperoni roll.
I'm gonna go with his pepperoni rolls, but his ranch.
I was just gonna say you got to have his ranch.
That ranch,
banging.
Oh my god!
Banging.
And one time I walk in and I said, "Give me a thing of ranch." He goes, "Best in the city."
Yeah.
And I looked at him, I go, "That's bold." He goes, "I know."
Yeah.
And I hated it. I was like, damn, if he's not right.
Dude, I don't even think he'll say that his pizza is the best in the city because he's so humble, but the ranch is fucking stellar.
It's like, and I'm almost embarrassed about how much I like something. It's like,
great.
It's also like when my friends are in great bands, I'm embarrassed about how much I love them.
I know.
But like that shit is delicious. So that's my appetizer. My meal, this is some punksy shit, or actually Valier shit, but like, the hot roast beef sandwich with the gravy over it and everything.
Yeah.
My mom would do that, but with venison.
Oh yeah.
So like,
hell yeah.
Shredded venison. My mom's venison, like with gravy and her French fries too, all together.
That honestly sounds phenomenal.
It's unbelievable.
You ever have the venison shepherd's pie from Piper's whenever they did that?
No,
dude. Piper's,
I can't believe it.
Piper's used to do it.
Well, and the cool thing about Piper's is they were close to our house, and that's the first place we went after we had our kid. And I remember like walking in with a baby, and Drew, the owner, taking care of her, and like so we could just. This is the first time we're out in public, and it was just so cool to be like, where
cool spot, yeah.
And it was just so like I've loved and loved that place. But like, have you ever done their Sunday supper?
Once. I had it once, but I don't go down there enough. I need to go down there more.
When we lived there, I lived there. Like that was.
What about dessert?
Dessert, I would be. Got to think of something good. You're the one that brought Leona's into the thing, but I would go with Leona's Heath cookie with
sandwich.
The cookie. It's Heath, and then it's sweet cream. I think it's the center. It's.
Yeah, they make some banging ice cream sandwiches.
So here's the problem with that is so we print for them, which is so cool. Like, because
do you?
Yeah,
okay,
and they'll drop off. Like they'll come by.
Hell yeah!
But I split space with my good friend Matt Dayak, and he's a local photographer. His like like his work is ridiculous. Like he's one of those dudes that can do anything.
Yeah,
Like,
he took photos. My buddies at Oak Hill Post.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that shit. It's
Yeah.
just like it's almost enraging how good he is, but he shoots their photos.
Yeah.
So they got him a cooler to keep their sandwiches in while he's photoing, and so he has a Leona's branded freezer in my office that I'm not allowed to touch. And I think he does it on purpose, but it's like I don't think he notices when they disappear because they disappear.
Yeah.
But it's like those things are
Dangerous.
yeah, and it's like it's a meal, so like sometimes they'll come out like you want to split one. I'm like yeah, because that's just enough to want more.
Yeah, it's
But, like,
it's
when
a
I eat
good.
the whole one, it's like
It's a good size. Like you're it's good.
yeah. I'm proud of my answers.
Okay. Now I usually throw this one in here. There's 2 consolation questions, but what's your best concert you've ever been to?
So here's where I'm kind of broken is that like I love basement shows and I love my friends' bands more than so my friend John Flude's band Five Knuckle Shuffle, when they played I'm gonna shift it. His band Drag Strip Syndicate, when they played a New Year's show at this bar called Gandalf's in Frostburg, Maryland.
Wow.
So it was them, another friend's band, Buzz Sawyer. They played this show, and when you came in, it was New Year's, and the owner of the bar was like, it's $20 to get in, and then you can't leave until we close it. And then he just opened the doors. Like if you wanted a beer, you went back and poured it yourself.
Hell yeah.
Like it was just, you want a sandwich, go make it,
Love that.
And that band, like Drag Strip Syndicate live, was one of the like most mind-blowing things I've ever seen. But John, the way he plays bass is just,
That's a good answer.
it makes me mad to see somebody that good. So I would go with that one. Also went to see, my wife and I took our kids to Asheville to see Tame Impala years and years ago, and our kids were little and they lost their shit. They
Yeah,
loved
I
it
get
so
down
much.
to that.
So that was cool.
That's good.
So those two.
Okay. What's a restaurant you like going to in the city?
Pipers.
Pipers?
Pipers Pub.
Okay, that's a good answer.
No, I love Pipers. I love Badamos. I love, it's this city. Like we're very lucky, and
We are
it's-
lucky.
It's with Oak Hill Post closing, it's kind of cool how they're having these, openings on weekends and stuff. So it's cool to watch that change up. And then yeah, we're real lucky. But there's like I love Moonlit Burgers too. I like to eat. I think like a lot of the things. My favorite things usually come down to like
Food.
what I'm gonna eat.
Yeah, same thing, dude. I'm a big dude. Always been a big dude. Revolves around food.
Right. And I'm trying to, like me and again, Matt Dayak, we went to, like he showed me this video. I hadn't done like overseas travel and stuff. He's like showing me this sandwich in London. I was like, let's go eat that.
Yeah.
And he goes, I will. And like right then and there, like we're booking flights. We went to London, ate this sandwich, and it was just like sit down, close your eyes and enjoy this thing. We did other stuff, but like that was the impetus of going. And it was like, so now I've realized like if you are, traveling with intent, and some of it is like, if you can eat something that makes you close your eyes and just enjoy that for that moment.
Yeah.
Like Anthony's Ranch.
Those are great answers. Okay. Second to last question. You're getting ready to go on a road trip. You go into a gas station, you get a snack. What's your snack of choice?
So if I'm going to Sheetz, I get a cup of coffee and I get 3 little sliders and I set them on the dash and I go through the sliders. Like those are that's my snack. But I always set them right there so I could drive with them. And it's like, I don't even know if I like them as much as I just like the ritual of doing it.
Yeah, the ritual.
But a good like my go-to snack, like either beef jerky or M&Ms.
Yeah, beef jerky is probably one of the most chosen on here.
Yeah, it's
and combos.
Combos is good.
Everyone
like straight up
picks
combos.
pizza combos.
Pizza combos.
I haven't had them in years, but everyone picks them on here.
They're
it's
a
insane.
delight. They're a delight to eat. I don't buy combos that often.
I know, it's weird.
I buy more Pringles than you'd think.
Yeah.
And it's funny because like we get to a point where you're just crushing the sleeve. It's like the little short sleeves and these long sleeves, and you just like. I don't know if I like them. I just like eating them.
Yeah, that's a good answer. Okay, last question. If you could have a conversation with anyone alive or dead, who would it be and why? And if you could forego choosing a loved one?
Forego choosing a loved one. And it's somebody that has existed?
It could be fictional character.
Oh, you can't make it fictional.
I mean, you could pick whoever you want. I've had people pick Stan Marsh on here.
That's a lot. this is going to sound ridiculous. Okay, and also language is not a barrier.
Yeah.
Marcus Aurelius, like the emperor.
Okay, yeah.
Like I discovered Stoicism a couple years ago,
yeah.
and it's. I think if I hadn't had that through COVID, I'd be batshit crazy right now. I would love to sit with that dude and be like, "What do you think of that?"
Yeah.
You know, it'd be cool to sit with like some religious figures too, to be like, "Did you really say this?" Like Jesus, sit with Jesus and be like,
"Yeah, I've had multiple people say that on here."
Were you know? But it seems almost too obvious. But like, I would legit take notes sitting with Marcus Aurelius, I think.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, man. I mean, that's all I got for you. I've berated you enough with questions.
I feel like there was a point where I'm just, and like again, I'm gonna blame you for the coffee, but I'm just like,
blame Red Hawk.
Hey, Red Hawk, thanks. Oh, I love this dude.
I got to get them on here.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, and they're Pittsburgh Taco Boys and everything now too. Okay. All right, well, yeah, dude, I appreciate you coming over and talking to me this morning. I was pumped we were able to do this early. Like, there's not too many people. Like I said, almost 300 people that I've had in this podcast, and very rarely do people want to do it as early as I want to, because you know. Not
well, I was like, we can go earlier, but I had some shit to get done.
I love
that.
Like,
up at like I said.
Well, take a couple minutes and tell promote your shit. Tell people where they could find you on Instagram, website, all that.
Our Instagram, CW Press. That's usually me just posting. I'm trying to post work stuff, and me and I had talked about Matt and Dak are starting we've been doing a small video series called Screen Time, of just the thing we're trying to do is like, you know, every T-shirt that comes through has a story. You know, like Pittsburgh Scanner, the one you're wearing right there. Mm-hmm. That's one of the best things I've discovered online. It's hilarious.
Fuck yeah.
And so, like,
dude.
Yeah, and when you start to do a shirt like that, you're like, well, what's the story behind this? Here's the story.
Veteran.
Here's why you're doing it. Yeah, and it goes
Pittsburgh.
Right. Yeah. And it goes, so every shirt, like, shirts don't just exist for no reason. This guy's starting a brand. This is a band. This is a charity. So, like, this Screen Time is telling the story of, like, different things that are happening. So, and I think we have like just a couple episodes out, but it's fun. So that's on our YouTube channel, and then it's just cwpress.com is our website. That's about it.
What's the address of the storefront?
691 Washington Road in Mount Lebanon is our retail store. It's available, everything and more that you can get on there. You can get through our website as well. So if there's people listening to this beyond the ability to come into Mount Lebanon, definitely hit up the website. Yeah, I'm sure there's a ton of stuff, but man, it's
I think it was swell.
Yeah, when you said the format, how long it was, I'm like, oh my god, I'm gonna be annoying as hell. I was annoying as hell, but
dude. Everyone gets so scared because they're like, what are we going to talk about for 2 hours? And
but
it's
you
like,
handle it like a champ.
Dude, 2 hours and 18 minutes. Yeah, I mean, that's like, I hate whenever I'm listening to a podcast and people try to keep it to a hard hour, because like you don't even fucking have chance to get into anything good. Okay. You know, I want it to be tangential. I want to dive down these like weird crevices and learn about weird shit. But
I don't even know what we talked about. That's I go back, I'll be like, oh shit, did I? All right,
that's good.
I love it, and it's plus it's cool looking outside. It's like how much snow's hit on the ground, and
hell yeah,
I'm stoked for today, man. I got a whole day ahead of us.
I appreciate it. I appreciate you coming over and sharing some time with me. Everyone else that's listening, appreciate yinz as usual. Each and every week, we're back with another great guest doing great things for the city. Thank you for listening. Call you right back.
Thanks. That was awesome, man.